This conference will now be recorded.
Huh. Success.
That works.
Okay.
Recorded.
Kirk? Are you okay, Kirk? Did it look like somebody just slapped his laptop off the table? That was weird.
I wasn't watching, but maybe he tripped
Yeah.
over the cord or something.
I hope not.
It says he's talking.
I think he just has his microphone on.
Oh.
Evening,
Hi,
everybody.
Brian. Hi, Julie. Wow. There's Kirk. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to get in on the other system in Android and I just couldn't get it to work.
And now I had some difficulties tonight too, so I'm glad I got on early.
Is Director Jordan?
Not yet. And Jeanette, I think, is joining us too, right, Brenna?
Yes, she's going to be here for the item on conservation
first
calendar
item.
up front. Yep.
Mhm.
Monica, you're gonna light a candle or what?
When she does, she looks like an angel. Really, she's done that before. When she turns on that light on her ceiling fan, it's like, ah.
I actually already have a candle lit. That's why that's so funny.
Okay. No, where's the wine?
Oh, that's
Stand by. Let me help
it's
Kathy
also
Jordan sign in.
downstairs, but it's not opened.
Let-
Oh my gosh.
Stand by. She's texting me. Let me give her the information real quick. Yes. Hold on 1 second. Could have been me. Okay,
We have a quorum though, Tammy.
Yeah, hold on one second. I just didn't want to get distracted and make sure I give her the right the right number. Okay, there you go. All right, just send her the link. Okay. Yes, we do. We have one. We're good to go if you want to get started. I just sent her the meeting link.
Okay, well, I guess we can call the meeting to order at 6:33. Do we want to go through and establish a quorum?
Sure. Okay, I'll call the roll. President Wheeler,
Present?
Vice President Vella,
Here,
Director Zuka,
Here.
Director Schmidt,
Here.
Director Jordan.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, and with that, I'll turn it back over to the president.
Next item of business is public comments. Do we have anything to report, Tammy?
No, and the only other folks that we have here tonight are Liz Stitt, and she's with Redistricting Partners for a later presentation. And then I see employee Misty, our administrative supervisor, Misty Malzone, is here, but no public comments received.
Okay. Item 3, agenda review. Any additions, deletions, or objections to a consent agenda item?
None from staff.
Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I guess we can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, I had a question. I didn't
I'm
want to
sorry.
not approve it. If you want me to raise it now during item 3, then for consent,
Yeah.
I'll do that now.
yeah, but the consent is item 5, so we're not there yet, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. We are on acknowledgement and presentations, item 4.
And I
So
don't.
I don't see Jeanette. Do you want to get it
Yeah,
started, Rena?
Yeah, I'll try to get in there.
Yeah.
So this is just a report on a water awareness calendar. And it's something that we are in the process or have made copies of. So as you see in the fiscal impact, we spent $2,850 for printing and mailing of about 7,800 of these best of calendars. And typically we've had the schools, and they're talking about water, come to the district. We have a show, we have a presentation, we have some arts and crafts for them to do. But because of COVID, we haven't been able to do that. So we thought that we would try a different approach during the pandemic. And one of the ways that we've come up with an alternative is this best of calendar. And basically, you see here from Jeanette's report, it's a best of calendar that's been pulling entries from the schools who've participated in the district calendar contest between the years 2013 and 2020. And you see all the different schools that are located here. There's 12 of them. And so basically, just to show the board and the community, this is what the mailer is going to look like. It's going to talk about the California way of life, the drought and conservation efforts. And then there's a little bit more information about, we completed our urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan, and things that, people might want to look ahead for, like our water demand and water supply tracking tools that's on our website. And that we do have a report due to the Department of Water Resources regarding our water use on July 1. But here's the calendar that's been printed, is going to be sent out to our customers.
And we just didn't want to go a year, even though the schools, it was kind of busy and different with COVID, and there just wasn't a level of participation. We didn't want to go a year, especially in a year with drought, and continued reduced precipitation. We wanted to continue the momentum and still have it. So it was Jeanette's idea, which I thought was pretty clever, to do this best of. And then this is what it looks like printed. So it's pretty full size. It's just one page, but I think it was a good idea for her and John, how they designed the water conservation report on the back side of it. So it gets mailed to every customer. And so we just combine two things into one, with this water awareness, giving them the calendar, and then also giving having the annual conservation report included in it too. So I think it turned out really nice. I think it was a clever idea and something different, but it's still keeping us in touch with customers with regard to conservation efforts and our water efficiency standards. So I'm sorry she couldn't be here tonight, but definitely deserves the kudos. So thank you, Rena.
Any comments or
all.
questions from the board? Yeah, just a report.
Louis, I think I saw you waving.
Yes, yes. We don't have a raised hand, so question for probably Tammy. Tammy, so last year we didn't do anything at all, right?
No,
With this.
no.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
this year she didn't have any responses to some of the feedback either because schools were on different schedules or they weren't all back in school full time. So that's the reason why we delayed it another year.
and normally how much do we spend on this project?
That's a good question. I would say probably around the
Yeah.
same amount. I mean, because we haven't really changed much in our customer base.
No, I think this was very clever because of the situation that we're all in and this under the circumstances. We still kind of reached out to these schools and somehow we're going to promote them as we promote the conservation way of life and all of that. So I think this was very well done and very clever, given what we have. And I was just kind of curious. It is one of the more favorite meetings that we do have in the years, and it is a shame. It's a real shame that President Wheeler and Schmidt were not able to enjoy that because it is truly. I mean, you've seen it, but this time when you were president, it couldn't be done in person. So hopefully next time.
Yeah, next year maybe all the three of them you guys can all participate together since they missed it because it is fun and I think the folks who attend have a good time as well and the parents.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Kathy, you had a comment or a question?
I do. I think it was just kudos to Jeanette for doing this. I think it was a really creative way in, a world that's brand new to all of us. I do think that, I know we're talking about it later on the agenda when we go back in person, whether that's 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months from now, if we could at some point invite all of the winners to just come for a meeting so that we could recognize them. I think that would be, that makes meetings a lot more fun too when we get the kids and the parents and interested in water conservation and just being part of the overall community. I would really encourage us to think of inviting the winners and their families to a future meeting when we're back in person. Tammy, I think you're muted.
So sorry. I'm sorry. To be clear, the photos or the little pictures in there, they're from past years. So those kids aren't in the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade anymore. I mean, it doesn't mean that Jeanette can't track them down, but I'm just saying to invite them to a meeting because we put them in this, I don't know how difficult that's going to be, but definitely we're going to deliver them to the schools, some of them, so that they can maybe see their artwork even as 5th graders and they did it as a 3rd grader or whatever. So, that's something for us to think about.
Yeah, I don't want to add more work, but I would still love to have them, even though this is artwork that they did a few years ago.
We'll mention it to Jeanette, see how tough that'll be to tackle.
Tammy, maybe Director Jordan may not know that these children were actually invited in previous meetings.
Yes.
So because
the
winners do come to our meeting and they get pictures with the parents and the board and Jeanette and all of that, so.
They get a nice plaque. They get the winners get money cards. So, and the teachers do too that have the most participation. But yeah, we'll see what she can do with that. And they come back and acknowledge them as older students.
Okay, if there are no other comments on the report, we can move on. And the next is now the consent agenda. Anyone have a brief question related to any of the consent items? Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions, one for 5A and one for 5B. 5A, page 8, strategic element number 1, the second bullet point about emergency backup generator services. And I'm just trying to recall whether or not we talked about batteries as backups as well. Or maybe we talked about it and said no, but I'm trying to recall we did.
I didn't have that in my notes, and Monique and I kind of tag team on this because she did the minutes and I did the staff report. I didn't have batteries in my notes from that meeting. Maybe somebody else remembers.
Or would it be possible for someone to go back and check the audio?
Monique can do that and see. I know she did that for these minutes, so I'm looking really quick. I guess
Yeah.
she doesn't have it in there.
If she did and she doesn't think it's in there, then that's fine.
Okay, yeah, we can double check.
Okay. And then my other question was for item B, page 14. The employee retention credit program towards the bottom of it. If you could just come back and let us know what happens with that, I'm just curious what.
We will do that. Monique's got that on her list, so I'm hoping that we find out some information tomorrow.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks a lot. That's all I had. I'm unless there are other directors with questions, I'm happy to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I don't see any other people with questions. Oh, Louis.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Director Schmidt, I'm sorry, are you ready for me to call roll?
Yes, please.
Okay, Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice President Vella,
Yes.
Director Zuga,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Move my papers around. So next item is 6A, hearing on our at-large electoral system.
Okay, so I was going to start this out just before I introduce Liz and say that this is our second public hearing. We have one more to go, the board does. And tonight you're going to see the same draft plan 1 and 2 because we didn't get any feedback, no public comments. And tonight is just to find out if the board is leaning toward one option over the other because next month is your final public hearing. And it's a pretty tight deadline because we have to get stuff to the elections office by the first week of April, maybe the second week of April. I didn't change much in this staff report except update it to include on page 27 what we did last month for January 27th. And then to include, as you see on after page 28, so starting on page 29, the little mailer card, we decided to add just a last bit of public outreach besides the daily journal advertisement, beside that e-blast on Nextdoor last month, and besides our website and the creation of the elections webpage, we sent this card out to every customer so that everybody would feel like we reached them and they had an opportunity for input for tonight's hearing. So unless there's questions about that, and I know Rena can turn the pages or the slides for Liz, I'm available for questions. And then I introduce Liz Stitt from Redistricting Partners to just step you back through this presentation and find out if there's a preferred option for the board to consider for next month's adoption. Liz?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Tammy, for the introduction. As she mentioned, this is the second public hearing. I will be going over much of what you went over last time, but it is an opportunity for anyone from the public to comment, and it is an opportunity for you all to let me know what you think of the maps, and it gives you the chance to give us direction on where you want to see the maps go next time, and potentially next meeting you will be voting on a map. As the slide says in front of Tammy's computer, Redistricting is essentially the process of adjusting boundaries every 10 years, happens after the census. So once you all go districted, you will be doing this again in 10 years. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And these are the traditional redistricting principles that we use during the process. These are very standard, used throughout the country. It's also solidified in California law through the Fair Maps Act. So the first criteria that we use is each district has to be relatively equal in size. This is Supreme Court precedent. It has to be under 10% total deviation, and I'll get into what that means when we look at the census data. And then each district has to be contiguous. Essentially, that just means that the divisions will have to be one whole piece and not jumping from different divisions. Then we want to keep districts compact. So that's where we're avoiding those funny looking shapes that people often associate with gerrymandering. And then we want to maintain communities of interest as much as possible. A definition of communities of interest includes a group of people, a neighborhood, a community who have similar policy concerns and would benefit from being districted together. Policy concerns that are relevant in this case obviously would deal with water, so anything relating to that would be relevant in terms of COIs. And then next we want to follow city, county, local government lines when practicable, as well as natural boundaries, so highways, creek beds, stuff like that. Go to the next slide, please. So tonight we will be going over two options, just like we did last time. We have draft map 1 and draft map 2. We can go to the next slide. So this one creates a large division 1 on the eastern portion, on the western portion of the district. It uses, this entire map uses main roads when possible to act as dividers. So it's easy to tell where the dividers are. However, I do just want to note that there are some funny looking census blocks that we can't cut, unfortunately. So if it does look a little jaggedy, it's because of the shape of the census block. So you'll see Division 1, it uses San Juan and Hastings Drive. And then you look at Division 3, it uses Arbor Avenue, Arthur Avenue as a divider between 3 and 2. Division 4 tries to encompass the university. And then Division 5 is the eastern portion, and it does dip down, even touching Division 2 as well. You can go to the next slide. So this is the data that we use to assess all of the issues related to redistricting. So remember, we want to keep it under a 10% deviation. And we also want to make sure that we are following the Federal Voting Rights Act. So that's why we have the citizen voting age population data that is there to make sure that we are in compliance with the VRA. We are, I see no issues there. Anytime an issue would arise, it's when there is 50% or more of a protected class, but we don't have that in this case. So looking at the 2020 census data, that's what we use to balance the population. So we can go to the next slide. So here you see we have a total deviation for this plan as 7.3. So what we do is we take the highest number and we take the lowest number for deviation and we add the absolute values. That gives us the total deviation. So go to the next slide. And then we have Plan 2. So the western portion looks very similar to Plan 1, but it does differentiate a lot more on the eastern portion of this. So again, Division 1 uses San Juan and Hastings as a divider. 3 and 2 also use main streets when possible to act as a divider. But you'll see that 4 and 5 are very different than Plan 1. So 4 again does take the university, but it goes further south all the way down to the end of the district. And Division 5 takes all of the eastern portion and uses El Camino Real as the divider for the most part. We can go to the next slide. It's just a bunch of boring data. The computer's revolting. So while we wait, I'll just spoil the surprise here. The total deviation is 9.3, still under the 10% deviation that it needs to be under, so it's perfectly fine to use that. And if we, perfect, you can stay there. So if we want to, great. So the today, obviously being the 24th, this is our second hearing on the draft maps. Next time, we will potentially take a vote. So now is your opportunity, well, if there are members of the public, to comment, give your own opinion, give us direction. But from the board members, we are looking for more direction on where you want the maps to go, how to look, or if you're happy with them, let us know so we can be prepared for next time. So with that, I will kick it back over to Tammy.
Thank you. And then, in the staff report, there's a process that we follow to open the public hearing and then close it like we did last month. Right now, I'm looking at the attendees, and I do not see anybody's name that I haven't already mentioned, or any member of the public. And again, we've received none here at the district in response to the web page and all the information that's been out there. So I can go back to you, President Wheeler, and just as long as we open up the public hearing and allow for that to formally proceed, then we'll be good.
Okay, so we can open the public hearing and then close the public hearing and then go on to board member questions, comments. Let's see, Louis, you had a question?
Yeah, if you open a public hearing, I think you need a motion to close it. That's all. So is there a time frame how long we have to keep a public hearing open, like 5 seconds or less, or what?
We usually do it for 1 minute. We open it at 1 minute, and then 1 minute later we close it. So
Very
if there's
good.
nobody from the public present.
I just clarify, I don't think you need a motion to close.
Yeah.
You can
Okay.
just comment. If there is none, you can go ahead and close the public hearing.
Very good. All right.
Okay, then I'll declare the public hearing closed and open it up for comments and questions from the board. Louis?
Yeah, I have a couple of quick comments. Two things. Tammy, so based on the presentation that Liz made, we have a price tag on this. So does that mean that we need to budget about $6,000 a year for the next 10 years so that we can have the money to do this again? You are muted.
I'm so sorry. In 10 years, so for the 2030 census, that's when you'll be considering this again. So
Correct.
maybe I'm a little
in 10 years,
confused.
In 10
Yeah.
years, this is going to cost us about $60,000.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Fair enough.
So $6,000 a year, basically. You know, we have to budget
Yep.
for this.
So
If I can,
the agencies that did it last year, like for example, my colleagues and I have talked over at Coastside and North Coast County Water District, the ones that got shanked, right? So they not only had to do it in 2020 and 2021, they had to do it again this year because of the new census data. So not only did they have to do it in this very compressed time frame, they had to turn around 2 years later and do it again because of the new census data.
Okay. And Liz, why do some cities, why are they opting for to have a mayor from the council to be, you know, it goes to the entire city or the entire area, whereas the council will be according to districting, or they have a mayor and
Mhm.
some other council member, and then the rest will have to fall to this. What what does that mean? You know, why are cities doing that, and is that allowed also in our case?
So there certainly are some cities who are transitioning from having essentially 5 city council members who would elect their own, elect the mayor. However, now that they're transitioning, they are deciding to have 4 city council members and 1 at-large mayor. Um, I can't speak for all cities on why they're choosing to do this, but I know that the logic there, at least partially, is at least 1 member will be at large and held accountable by the entire city. And also, they'll be thinking citywide instead of by district. So that's sort of the logic there. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if you have your counsel on tonight, but it might be worth looking into on the legal side on whether you all can do that. I am not sure.
Julie, you're not coming through. Nope. I can read your lips. There you go.
So, yes, I'd be happy. We have Voting Rights Act, Lewis, and I'd be happy to on your question and report that.
I did not hear that.
So she said she'd
Um,
be happy to look at that and report back, but I mean, we're going to have to know pretty quick because if we have to get them to
no,
draw four
I
divisions.
mean, I'm just curious. That's all. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, with the amount of public that we have, it's not as big of an issue as some city councils. So, you know, I'm happy with the with the explanation. So we don't need to go to the legal thing of it. We never had any problems, so
Okay.
I don't anticipate problems going forward. Liz, the 2 diagrams, or the 2 options that we're looking at, one of them kind of flows through the Old County Road,
Mhm.
and this one does not. This one that we have here looks like it looks like El Camino is the demarcation. It's a I'm looking at District 5 and District 4, but the other one kind of flows through. Yeah, there you go. I wonder why you have that little area there. You know, so um, El Camino is more of a natural divide.
Well, we certainly wanted to give you options and to get a sense of what you all prefer. We're also working with the city, so we've seen neighborhoods similar to this. So I think that was a natural progression for the demographer when he drew it. Just to give you an option and to get a sense of what you all prefer. If you prefer the El Camino split, then that's good for us to hear.
Um, I don't know where the city of Belmont is going to make their decision or where they're going to settle with this, but I imagine this is going to be pretty confusing because I am pretty sure that the city of Belmont is not going to go with either one of these two. They're going to have their own,
Yep.
and they probably are going to have a council, a mayor at large. It appears. So it's, for the same people, for 99% of the same voting population, it's going to be pretty confusing, especially when you have the election of the board of directors of the district and the council happening at the same time. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Brian, I think you were next.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I focused on the same divisions 4 and 5 in the two drafts. And as far as El Camino being a dividing line, it's almost unfortunate because I think it's more of a uniting line, where you have a kind of community of interest is the flatland of Belmont. But that's too many people in the flatland. So I think of the two, I don't have a really strong preference, but if you wanted to give a preference, I'd probably say the draft number 2, because it unites a bit more of the flatland in number 5, in Division 5. That's one philosophy. The other philosophy is just Division 4 and Division 5 are going to be sharing the folks down. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Kathy, did you have?
I did. I'll just quickly comment on Lewis's comments about the city. So I did attend the city council meeting on Tuesday because they were discussing it. They haven't made a decision. They did ask the consultant to have our draft maps mapped against how they're looking at it. But because the water district encompasses more than just the city of Belmont, and they're going to 4 districts versus 5, the maps weren't going to be apples to apples. So they did inquire about that, Lewis, just as a point of information on the council. I felt I also like the second map more. The only reason I would think to go with the first map is the deviation slightly less. I mean, I know with the second map we're still within the 10%, and things might change dramatically with all of the development that's happening in Belmont, but I don't think that we should count on people that aren't here yet. So I don't have a strong preference one way or the other, to be honest. When I think about communities of interest, I think as a city, we all share the same interests with water. I think it's slightly different I've done these districting maps with school districts, and it's a lot more challenging. I think here we all have a united interest. So I don't have a strong preference one way or another. I liked map 5 better, but I liked the first map better just because of the deviation. So I can go either way.
Matt?
Yeah, I think generally I would agree with the previous comments about the maps. I maybe I'll say that division 1 is all the big lots and big lawns, and therefore they're all grouped together, and all the irrigators, and then all the people with the small lots and small lawns, and maybe a little bit more water friendly are all clumped together. Us flatlanders are kind of in there as well. So I don't know. I did go back and forth about do I feel comfortable with El Camino being a dividing line? It's sort of is that creating sort of a sense of division, or is that an appropriate division, or is it really more representative? And when I looked at it just from an overall water use standpoint, which again, I agree is sort of the uniting characteristic, unlike, whether we're talking roads and all the other things that go with a typical city. it felt like it was pretty well divided to me to represent the different interests and the different sort of configurations and the demands that would be exerted on the water district. So I did also feel that the second map was maybe it's 51-49 though. I mean, that's really, there's not a lot there for me to make a decision on, but that's about where I landed on it.
Okay. Interestingly, I also was leaning towards version 2, and my logic was really given the fact that yes, most of the single family residential is in divisions 1 and 2. Almost all of our multifamily and commercial industrial properties are in the other 3 divisions. And they seem to be fairly well split. The only thought that I had was the Division 5 in the second set of maps really included almost all of the industrial users that we serve on the east side of El Camino type of thing. So it's from a community standpoint, that's probably closer than anything else we've got as a decision point. There are multifamily in all 3 of the, is it 3, 4, and 5 zones or divisions? I can't remember exactly. I always get 2 and 3 reversed. I don't know. I think it's 2, 4, and 5 have the majority of our multifamily land use. So Liz, I'm not sure, is that sufficient
I mean,
direction?
it sounds like the board is leaning toward draft plan 2, which is very good input. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, and I'm seeing heads nodding, during the discussion. So that's good, because then when we come back for the third hearing, that's what we'll be focused on, is that draft plan 2.
Yeah, and if there are any proposed changes, it doesn't have to be, you have to pick it if we make a proposed change. So it could just be, you want to see what the map would look like if we tweaked, a street to go to be a boundary instead of like one of the main roads. So that's always an option. But if you all are happy with how it looks now, then that's also good with me.
We have out on the website, board members, just so you know now, the link to go in and zoom in on the streets. So Liz is right. If you were to do that after tonight, you go through the exercise of just zooming in and go, Tammy, what if we just incorporated this street into zone 1, into division 1? Then I'll send that to Liz and just see what it does with the data. Okay. And then we can bring it back next month and show everybody. All right. And then that's what she's meaning by the little tweaks. So you are able to do that. And so are members of the public.
Mm-hmm.
Tammy, just a comment on that process was when I went on the website and tried to look at those maps, I found it very difficult to see the underlying streets through the colored tint that represented the different divisions. So it was hard to tell what the divisions really were.
Okay.
So it may be the tint just needs to be less
Lightened up.
so that you can see the street names and some of the property lines.
All right, maybe we can ask redistricting partners if they can lighten up the tent for those different divisions. I just zoomed right in and got really big with it when I did it,
Well,
but I can see where that was. Yes, it was shady.
maybe it's my screen. When I got down to the level where I could almost read the street name, it stopped going bigger. So
Oh yeah, I got it
yeah.
real big. Yeah. I wanted to make sure it worked when John put it out there. But I'll go look at it again.
I'll talk to our chief technology officer and see if that's possible.
Yeah, just to lighten the shades a little. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's great input. I'm glad you went out there and tried it.
One question, Kirk?
Sure.
May, the public suddenly takes an interest in this. Are we hitting a deadline at our next meeting, or is there more time?
No, we're hitting a deadline next month. We have a
Okay, so
big whole 8.5 by 11 page of requirements that we have to work with redistricting on because we have to get down to the nitpicky street level stuff that the elections office wants by that deadline in April.
okay, so we need to approve next month whatever we approve. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions or comments, I guess we can let Liz get off,
Thanks, Liz.
go on to the next item. Thank you, Liz.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm going to need to go to the website and pull up the agenda because for some reason this is not working. So hold
Uh-oh.
on.
All right. I don't know what's going on with this tonight. Seems like everybody's having a little bit of issues. Glad I made you guys organizers.
Oh, that's just
I
really.
can go ahead and get started though, because you have your printed copies, and if members of the there's no members of the public here tonight, so um, I'll refer to the page numbers so that if somebody listens to the meeting, they'll know where I am. This is agenda item 7A, and I started on page 57 with the staff report, just reminding the board members that we met on January 13th, and the board was, they discussed and reviewed the 2021 and 2022 strategic plan and made some revisions. So I included in the packet the cover page that we typically put on there in the introduction, which just really provides the history so that if anybody ever wonders why is this being revised, there's at least that little bit of framework. Moving to page 60 in the agenda packet, the mission statement, vision statement, and strategic goals didn't get changed. So I just revised the date to reflect tonight's date for the board's consideration. And certainly it can be changed tonight if anybody had any input to either of those. And then I started on page 81. Is it 81? It's 61 with the revisions starting with strategic element number 1. And because in prior years, the board has directed me to do it in strike through so they can see what's changed, that's the way I presented it tonight, just so that it's easy to follow. And pretty much after I got finished with this, I went back and looked at the minutes just to see that I caught everything and then compared it to my notes that I had written. And it seems like we captured everything, except that we will check on that one item that Brian mentioned earlier about batteries. So the strategic element number 1 really just moves elements and priorities to put them in the proper category. That being the miscellaneous fees belongs more in finance, and the water service regs belongs in operations in number 3. But the board did ask that we, coordinate with the city of Belmont on this, the mutual benefit for backup generation during emergencies. So we added that as a B priority. Strategic element 2 on page 62, the board asked that we mark through the items that were completed. So in the A priorities list for the strategic element 2 of resource management, of course, the 2020 urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan were completed and adopted by the board in October 1st effective. So I renumbered them so that now we still have the long-term urban water conservation policy, the California Conservation Way of Life. And then added to that is the participation in the development of the Tier 2 water supply management implementation with the Bosco wholesale customers and SFPUC, which is a really good priority to have listed because those discussions are starting now. And then in the B priorities, we deleted the step down pressure energy because that had been investigated and explored and found that we didn't have the right pipe sizes in order for that to be beneficial. And then we added to B-2.3 the exploring solar and the renewable fuels and non-fossil sources and the climate divestment opportunities. And then added to the B priorities was coordinating with the cities of Belmont and San Carlos on their housing element plans so that we can continue to stay in the forefront with regard to water supply and what might be available for those. So that got added to strategic element number 2B priorities. Moving on to 3A priorities, we completed the risk and resiliency assessment and the emergency operations plan. Those were submitted timely to the United States EPA. And under the B priorities, This is where we moved the water service regulations. We're going to take that, and actually we already have a good draft of this, working draft, the water service ordinance, and put them into the water service regulations format. And like I said, we're working on that internally. The board should probably see that sometime this year. And then the other thing is to develop a comprehensive set of operational standard operating procedures, including the measurement and the tracking tools, and then to create a schedule. This is one staff recommended in the B priority of timing for policy updates. We have so many policy documents now, it just doesn't make sense to make them all be reviewed in 2 years or 3 years, because otherwise that's all staff will be doing, and that year is reviewing policy documents. So we're going to create a schedule. Monique and I have been working on that for these major policy documents to ensure there's some staggering so that they can be reviewed in beneficial years, unless there's necessary changes, obviously. In strategic element 4, which is human resources management, on page 64, we completed the COVID-19 prevention plan. It's going to be ongoing, obviously, and it's been revised. And so we still haven't implemented it, it's still in place, but it was completed. And then there were no other changes for human resources for either the I or the A or the B categories. And the final element is the financial management, number 5. And I'm hoping I worded, because Vice President Bella had mentioned wording A-5.2. I'm on page 65 of do a better job at bringing down the per capita water costs. I selected the language strive for more competitive water rates and hope that meets with the board's approval, or certainly open for any other language. And then we added the professional accounting services contract and the appointment of a district treasurer to the A priorities. And the B priorities, this is where we moved the district treasurer and the accounting services over to A. And then we moved from, or we have in here the implementation of the miscellaneous fees, because we do have those in process for them to be updated. And that was all that was discussed during the meeting. And that's all that staff has to present, unless the board wants to make any changes or has other things they want to add. Brenda, were you able to get it back up again? The agenda?
I've got it back up again, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay.
Anyone on the board who has a comment or a question about the changes to this? Louis?
Just a quick comment too. So Tammy, when we strive for more competitive water rates, but we still know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's not as measurable, but I didn't know how measurable we can be with that. So unless you want to say that, I did think of the one that I've heard in the past since I've been here is make sure we're in the middle. I mean, that's measurable, right? Make sure we're in the middle when we do a water survey. I can certainly change the language to that, but I didn't know how specific you wanted to be with that. I'm open.
No, I mean, it's not the specificity that I am after. It's just that, as a matter of fact, I would rather it being interpreted as easily as possible by our customers.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like us to be, and our staff to be more knowledgeable about, is that we all know that when we compare the competitive water rates between agencies, or the per capita rate between agencies, we never, ever, ever compare apples with apples. And we know that, okay? Because certain districts have other services that they lump into it, or they measure it differently. So you're never exempt. However, whatever the rate is per capita, we need to be able to qualify it. Yes, it is this way, but that's because we do this, this, and that, and because our ratepayers, that's what they look at. They look at the bill, and they compare with the neighbors, and they compare with their family that lives up north or down south or whatever. And I've heard it before, and I don't really like when I hear that, oh my God, the water rates of the Mid-Peninsula Water District are so high. And obviously I go into a long dissertation until they go like, oh yeah, but they're still high. And when you go to public events or to family events, they know who you are, they know who I am, and usually this topic comes up, how come these rates, how come the rates of XYZ are higher, lower than what you have? And that means that's the start of a conversation, so but anyway, you know what I'm talking. We've talked about this before, and you know where I'm coming from, and I don't need to
No.
belabor
So you're
that.
right. When we don't compare apples to apples, I mean, we do the best we can with the rate consultant, but you're absolutely right. Every agency has a different perspective on how much of their fixed costs they want to recover, right? We decided, and you all gave that direction to take baby steps to increase that fixed system charge, right? Rather than just let it explode like Hillsborough did, where they're recovering like 55% of their fixed system costs in their rates. That's why they have the highest water rates. But at the same time, then you're absolutely right. Then there's other things that get added that we don't necessarily add, at least into the water rate charge or the commodity rate charge, because we, like fire protection, for example, right now is a separate line item. And so it is very challenging and difficult, but I think we really do try to do the best job that we can. And then definitely with the board's input to say, how much do you want to go up on that fixed system charge? How much do we want to recover rather than hitting? And then again, too, how you ask for the different tiers. Like when we do the studies, and the one year we found out that in our lower brackets, our 1 to 2 unit users, we were darn near the lowest, right? Because that was the category of folks that might be on fixed incomes and who have conserved the most to be down in that very lowest category to pay the least amount of money. So anyway, believe me, I hear you, and I think it is too a very, very important strategic objective. And you're right. I've had this conversation many, many times, and then usually it's with Cal Water versus us, right? Because of our customers in San Carlos. And they'll say, wow, they live right across the street. They pay $10 less more a month. And then, I go into the dissertation that I get their water rate announcements when they go to the Public Utilities Commission and they raise rates and they true up at the end of every year. I haven't ever, gotten into the details of their capital program to see how much is reinvested back into their system. And I always think that that's probably the biggest difference between a private water company and a public water company. But it's just, it is a challenge to try to get that information to all tie together. It really is. But I definitely hear you, and I think that it's an important objective.
Yeah, thank you, and I do appreciate the effort and all that, but and the where we need to go with this one, and I appreciate you doing that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathy, you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a comment based on Lewis's comments. If what we're striving for is making sure what our customers understand, I'm not sure strive for more competitive water rates is the right verbiage, because we aren't comparing apples to apples. So inherently, if you look at strive for more competitive water rates, we're not being competitive now. And I would say that we are, but so not that I have the answer, Tammy, I apologize. I was trying to just brainstorm in my head, like, can we, instead of I know we wanted to take out the language, do a better job. But can we say something like continue to monitor per capita water cost rate, something like that, where we're not putting ourselves in a situation where we're being asked to compare to other agencies that aren't apples to apples. I'm just thinking out loud, guys. So
I like it. So continue to monitor per capita
water
rate.
costs. Yeah.
Water rates.
I said, yeah, water cost rates.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, you're
So
right. That statement might make it sound like we're not competitive. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I don't. Correct. That's what I want to avoid that. I want to avoid that we're not competitive.
Yes. Yeah. No, I hear you.
I think that's a good point. That's a good point. I will not miss that word competitive if you take it out. So
yeah. So continue to monitor per capita water rates.
Yeah.
I like it.
Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, I think this is kind of captured. Could you scroll up to the I don't know if the head of the beginning. Sorry, gotta go and move. I was watching the PDF and I don't have it open here.
You know what page you are, Matt?
Yeah, hold on, let me find it. It was our mission values and statement. I mean,
page.
It's cost effective, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
sort of what we have
Page
actually in our
60.
mission statement, is that it's not competitive per se, but we're trying to be
Yeah,
cost effective in what we do. And to me, if I wanted to lower water rates, I wouldn't do the capital program.
exactly.
So we're making decisions about spending money that affect rates, and then it's a balancing act between the wholesale rates that we pay, managing the infrastructure, all of that. And I think this board has historically been fairly forward thinking and long term, thinking about the long term benefits of things, and willing to raise rates when necessary, and then also willing to sit down and hold the line on rates when we don't think we need to. So comparing ourselves, to other agencies is always a good metric. But yeah, Hillsborough's, Los Altos, those guys, they're just totally different demographics. Cal Water, forget it. Not only do they not make the same investment in infrastructure, because they have to get all their capital projects approved by the PUC. So they tried to go to AMI, and the PUC shot them down, saying it's not cost effective. You're not going to make any money off of it, and you're losing money. So they can't do what we've done and so that's why not only do they get to distribute their rates from here into cities in the Central Valley that are, let's say, purely on groundwater, because they get to spread it across their entire district, we have to actually charge the cost of service to our little area. And in some cases, that's a disadvantage. I remember when I first joined this board, one of the Skyline Water District, LAFCO recommended that Cal Water take it over. And the reason for that was because there was, like, I don't know, 500,000 people, 500 service connections or something like that, and to share the cost of the entire system across just those few number of people, the rates were like $250, $300 a month. So they said, go to Cal Water. Cal Water can spread that out over a larger base, and you're going to pay a smaller fee. So in some cases that kind of makes sense. In other cases it doesn't necessarily. And I would argue that privatized water doesn't necessarily provide the same level of stewardship that we're able to provide. I mean, that's obviously a personal argument. There are people that argue to the side, but I would take AMI as an example of that us being able to go to that kind of a system, provide access to hourly water use data so people can understand what they're doing, spend a bunch of money on conservation and everything that we do is a good thing. So maybe we just need to focus on the cost-effective nature of it. I do think that's what we're trying to balance out. It's not being cheap; it's being somewhere not near the top to me, unless we have a very valid reason to be there. If we have a very valid reason to be there, then we need to be talking about it. But I don't know that we do.
I think adding those words makes the statement, I mean, continue to monitor cost-effective per capita water rates. I mean, it fulfills what's in your mission statement, and it fits within that and seems to respond to what everybody so far has said.
Yeah, I was trying to get at, I think what Lewis was getting at on the price, right? Which is, it's not just the per capita, it's we want to be, yeah, competitive, maybe not the right one, but and the cost effective is actually less specific, because you can argue what cost effective is and isn't. Is it the median? Is it the average? Is it the standard? I don't know. I think we've done a good job of it. So those are my 2 cents.
I think we're good, Matt. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's and I think if we change that, I think we are kind of matching what we're saying, what you brought up in the mission statement and all that, and I think I'm okay with it.
So we're putting in cost effective?
Sounds like it's okay, Lewis, adding cost-effective in there?
Yeah,
As
yeah,
read?
I'm good. I'm good with that.
I like it.
So approving this, typically, Julie, in the past, it's just been a voice vote, just a minute motion, if you will. There's no reso. So since we're in a virtual meeting, I believe we have to do a voice vote. Is that correct? Okay, so somebody has to move it and second it then.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, you're on, Monique.
Okay, let's see. Vice President Vella,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Thank you.
And although we didn't actually mention that, that also covers the director assignments.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just noticed that I missed that, but that one got pretty, I mean, it's even in final format thanks to Monique. So it shows your general manager recruitment advisory committee. And then I think one of you asked last month for the term for Louis Bella. So you'll see on Bosca, you'll see that we added his 4-year term ends on June 30th of 2025. And that was the only changes that we made on that. And we deleted the Happy Hydrant Committee. So yes, thank you. I just saw that as I scrolled.
Okay.
And I will finalize this, clean it up, add the changes to the water rates, and then we'll get it posted to the website, and I will send each of you a clean electronic copy so you have the whole thing for you.
Okay, so agenda item 7B.
Brenda,
That's
you ready
me.
for this one? Yeah.
Yeah, so tonight, board members, we're asking you to consider resolution 2022-02, which authorizes 4 things. One is the waiver of a district procurement policy requirement for competitive bids on construction project so that we can construct 400 foot of a civic lane water main replacement project. Also, the second item is to use $100,000 of PAYGO capital funds to construct that 400 foot of water line in civic lane. And it's in coordination with the city of Belmont's requirement for an alleyway project for a developer in the area. 3 is to award the construction to Golden Bay Construction in the amount of $73,850 and provide a 10% contingency of $7,400. And then the last item is to amend the capital budget for 21-22 to include this project. So this project came to us in the form of first just an investigation by the engineer for the developer of the Firehouse Square there on 6th and Broadway and O'Neill. You know, we've been working with them with regards to water for the project and completed that. In fact, there was a water service agreement that the board authorized. I have it here back in 2020. But this was a little different. The engineer contacted staff, Brent Chester, he typically works with developers, and told Brent that the city's requiring them, the developer, to totally reconstruct the alley between 6 and El Camino Real, and which is Civic Lane. And when Brent found that out, he says, "Hey, Brenna, you know, that water line that we have underneath there is old cast iron pipe, and it's very shallow. It's constructed. And I got a concern that if they go out there and literally remove all the asphalt before they relay it, it's just going to, you know, cause all kinds of problems." So we talked about it, and we remembered that we had a capital project to do a much larger civic lane improvement. It wasn't as high a priority with other capital projects, but it was identified as a capital project as early as the 2016 capital project list that the board looked at and approved back then. So we approached Tammy, the general manager, with this idea, said, look, you know, if we could do this or not, but if we don't do it, then there's just going to be a lot of work to fix a bunch of water leaks up there on the contractor. They're not going to be happy, or the developer, and it just doesn't make any sense. And then we also thought about it too, that it kind of goes in line with what the board said, that any time that we can get out ahead of a city's street project, in this case an alley project, to make improvements so that we don't have to go back in later and fix something, it just makes sense. So we were able to narrow it down to 400 foot, and I've got a drawing here, and you just to kind of take a look at it. We've got an area of 400 feet that's between Broadway and O'Neill, that alleyway there. So what we're looking to serve is, I don't know if you can see, maybe I'll put my cursor over it. There are 6 properties or businesses right here that front along El Camino Real, and they need to have water service. And so basically we are constructing or looking to construct either a 2-inch or a 4-inch, depending on the cost of the material. But the construction bid that we got was for 2-inch copper tubing. And it would be to go from a connection out there on Broadway to the last service connection over here, which is about 400 foot. We're able to get 2 price quotes, one from Golden Bay and then the other one from Dayco Construction, and that was part of our submittal to the board. And you can just see that the price differences were quite a bit. I mean, Golden Bay Construction was $73,000 and Dayco's was almost double that. So we're recommending, you know, the Golden Bay Construction and a 10% contingency just in case there's some strange matters going on with you know, materials, because there's still problems trying to get materials. There was a question before that was made aware to staff from board member Jordan, taking a look at our amended capital budget spreadsheet that was here. And if you notice where I've got highlighted the civic lane improvements, I actually have the $100,000 in the wrong column. It should be over here in the capital budget column. That was a typographical error on my part. We didn't catch that, but she did, and I'm glad she caught it. But anyways, we're just asking the board if they would go ahead to approve this. We discussed the matter with district council. And Julie said that the procurement policy it's not a state law, but it's a board policy. And so the action tonight is the waiver request is something that the board can do. It's just not typical for us to do this, but it's something that there's a timeliness to it. The developer is under the gun to try and get the alley under construction by April. And so we said, well, you know, this is something that we're going to have to take to our board to get them to award. And as soon as we know one way or another, you know, we'll let you know. So we're here tonight to see if you will go ahead and adopt resolution 2022-02, which will allow us to construct this 400 foot of water service line in an alleyway. Any questions of the board members of me?
Brian, you have you speaker on?
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with the waiver for a small project that's under the gun like this. Did have a couple questions though. You're asking for 100,000 in PAYGO funds, but the total budget is like 81,000. Can you explain the difference?
There's really no difference. We came up with $100,000 as just an off the cuff. We're only going to spend what the contractor has is going to charge us, and he's basically given us a bid price of a little under $74,000, and we're just asking for a 10% contingency in case something comes up that's just not known. But I don't see us spending $100,000. I see us spending more like $75,000.
Yeah, I understand the 10% contingency, but that doesn't take it up to 100,000.
It doesn't.
So I just don't.
I think when he originally did it, we just put the placeholder as 100. But then I think, Rena, we talked about, we weren't sure if there were going to be other services necessary. Like, I don't know if there's going to be any potholing. We don't know if there's going to be anything else that might fall within the parameters of my signature authority. So I
Yeah.
think that's why he originally intended to just say, let's just bring the whole thing to 100K just in case something else comes up that we're not aware of.
We just went out there and walked the site, you know, and they did some potholing and some other work out there, but we don't know what's out there. This is just, you know, it's not typical of our practice. We go out there and try and pothole to find out what's underneath the street, and we haven't been able to do this. So it looks like it's pretty clean, but we don't know. We do know that there's a storm drain crossing about midway, and it's a big concrete culvert, and we're going to have to go over it. But you know, that's where the existing water line is, so we know where that is. But you know, we're just not aware of anything else that's going to be detrimental to the project. But I don't disagree with you, board member Schmidt, that $100,000 is a lot more than what the construction bid is. But we just wanted to put some kind of buffer in there.
Okay, if you think there's some possibility, then I'm fine with that. I just wanted to understand. And then the other question was going back, you're on that diagram. This talks about 8-inch ductile iron pipe for most of the project, and you're talking about 2 to 4-inch copper. Is there a reason for that difference?
When this was put together, this project description here, it was taking a look at the needs without I'm going to say without Firehouse Square being there. Things have changed in the last 4, 5, 6 years now, and so there's that development there in the corner, and basically the water line again is going to dead end right here where my cursor is. The buildings are located right here, so we're not going to be going all the way to O'Neill Avenue with this water line. We're going to stop right here. And so we're only serving water to these 4 people here. There's an existing fire hydrant over here. Eventually, when we do our own capital project at some point in time in the future that we have not even identified yet, we will probably relocate some fire hydrants that similar to what we've got here. I don't see us putting a fire hydrant here, but there's going to be some requirements for another development that's proposed over here that's probably going to include some fire hydrant relocations. So basically, this water line that we're proposing is going to provide domestic water for 5 storefronts that are along here. And I know one of them is a restaurant, but I think the other ones are maybe like an insurance shop or something like that, that basically have, maybe a small little kitchen with a sink and then a restroom with a, lavatory and such. So not a lot of water demand. So we don't need to have an 8-inch water line in this 400 foot. We need to have enough water to serve those 6 customers that have a demand, a domestic demand.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you.
Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, it's kind of more a comment than a question. I think that what I would prefer to see on this kind of thing is I think we've got a couple things going on. No problem with the waiver. But I'm gathering you got a fixed price then and a little bit of contingency. So we're approving a contract. In my mind, that contract, you get $7,500 on top of that, $7,400. That's it. That's what we're approving as a board. So if what you're saying is, again, this gets into that conversation we've had, you don't get to add more money than the $7,400 without coming back to the board. General manager discretion and all that kind of stuff, that's done. So if what I'm hearing is correct, which is that, there might be other services and other potholing and that's not included in the bid, what I would prefer to see is, award a contract and approve a $25,000 contingency. Because that's what you're asking for effectively. You're asking to spend the money, but the ask, what I'm hearing is you want to be able to spend the money. The way this is worded, you can't spend more than $73,000 plus $7,400 on this contractor. That's
Right.
It
might
the
be different
appropriation
vendor.
is one thing.
Yeah.
Well, but then what are you saying though? Like you're bringing.
So we're just budgeting the project at 100,000 because we're not sure if there's going to be other services required. The contract,
Right,
you're absolutely right.
have to
The
be another
construction.
contractor. You see what I'm saying? You're not going to be
Or it
able
could be a
to.
service vendor. It could be a service vendor. We don't
Correct.
know yet. You don't know yet.
It's not. I guess what I'm saying is that the way it's structured, it's not Golden Gate. Golden Gate might be able
Right.
to do potholing for you or
Right.
whatever. They might be able to install the service laterals for you. But the way this is structured, you can't have them do it if the cost is going to exceed $7,400.
Exactly.
You would have to
Exactly.
go out and do somebody else. So I guess,
Exactly.
I mean, just put it this way, if I was going after this to my city council, I'd be asking for $100,000 authority to spend if I thought I needed to spend it on Golden Gate. And I have an estimate of 75, and I need on a percentage basis, it's a really high contingency. But if that's the variability, that's the variability of it. I would prefer, to know it and give you guys the authority you think you need, rather than because it's not a lot of money. That's why it doesn't really bother me. But I think the detail here is, okay, we're allowing you to appropriate $100,000 of pay grow, and we approve that. Then you're going to spend, let's just call it, I don't know, whatever that is. Let's call it $80,000 on tops on Golden Gate. You have $20,000 to play with, but that can't go to Golden Gate.
Right.
And that's what you want, then you're asking for the right thing, but it's got to go to somebody else. And
Yeah.
Maybe Golden Gate can do service laterals. Maybe they could sub out whatever it is you needed to do. So
Right.
is this the right structure, or would you, or you really prefer to be able to spend the money on Golden Gate?
So Rena, what do you think?
I think that we change the number in there so it equates to the Golden Gate bid and
81,250.
the 10% contingency.
Okay.
Okay.
So it changed the 100,000 to 81,250. That
Yeah,
includes.
we'll change the resolution so it reflects that number.
Okay.
Well, Yeah, I mean, you already have the authority to spend the 73 plus the contingency based on this. What I'm saying is, and you would have the authority to spend another 20 in pay-go on somebody else. But I was just questioning whether or not you thought that was going to need to be Golden Gate or not. And if you did, then I would say this isn't structured correctly. If you thought it was going to be, no, this might be some dynamic for utility locating, or it might be somebody else that we have on-call contracts with, it would be somebody else, not Golden Gate, then we're fine.
That's what we
Okay.
thought. That's exactly,
Okay.
it would be a different vendor than Golden Gate. Yep.
Okay. So then you're appropriating money for a project. You have a contract. We're awarding a contract with the contingency. You can't spend more than the contract amount and the contingency against Golden Gate, but you might
Great.
spend 20,000 elsewhere on other things.
Correct.
It's totally fine.
And we would bring that back to the board and
We'd
report
bring
that out.
Yeah, bring that back to
Right.
the board if
And
we
if you
needed
needed to
that.
increase it, if you needed to increase Golden Gates above the
We would come,
$7,400 total, you'd have to come back to the board.
exactly.
Which is why I wanted to ask now, do you really need
Yeah.
100 for Golden Gate, or do you really need just this in the contingency?
No.
Because it could be also consulting services. Maybe you need some money from PAC-4 to,
Exactly.
do engineering. Maybe you need other
Yeah.
things, that fire flow
Yeah.
analysis, and you want 20 in there
Yeah.
just for the project. Got it. No problem.
In this
in my-
instance, it's just because it's such a compressed time frame. We just wanted to
Right.
make sure we had our bases
Yeah, yeah,
covered. You know what I
we
mean?
ran
No,
through
I
this.
get it. And I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what you thought you were going to spend it on, so
That
that
was
we
the
didn't end up in
intent.
a situation where we're giving that 20 to Golden Gate because it was
No.
appropriated to the project.
No, it would not. We would come back to
Okay,
the board. We're clear on that.
cool.
That was
So
part
we'll,
of my question to
yeah.
follow up, was whether or not there were other fees that we were going to have to include in the project, like PAC-4 type of thing. So it sounds like as you have it structured, it seems to work.
Mhm.
So I'm
Yeah,
happy with it.
Yeah, it should be a simple job. It's just been such a time constraint. And in fact, the developer's been, ringing me pretty much every day, waiting to get the word as to whether or not we're going to go ahead and do this. So I apologize for any confusion. It wasn't our intent to confuse it. It's just, we've been rushed to try and get this put together. And we don't see any engineering fees from PAC-4. We just need to have somebody go in there and construct a 2-inch service line for 400 feet. And thought it can be done faster by hiring a contractor than for staff to do it.
Tammy, on a large project for our capital improvement program where we have staff time that has to happen, like if there actually are staff members doing the inspection or doing some lateral work or that type of thing, would we include their time into the
Yes.
capital budget?
Yep.
We do that. It's just that it doesn't show up in the budget because we've already got their time budgeted in personnel costs and salaries and wages, but it is accounted for. So they actually put it on their timesheet because it has an account number, and they account for their time when they work on our capital project, because we capitalize all of that with that asset.
Right.
So it's capitalized with the asset. Is it counted as our capital improvement budget payments?
So it is accounted for like that. It just doesn't show up in the budget. Okay, so it's an accounting issue. It's just that COP funds don't pay it, but it's accounted for like they
Okay.
did. Because the
Yeah.
salaries and wages are budgeted in the operations budget, and it would be like double dipping. Believe me, for years, Candy and I went rounds and round, or she would just throw those numbers in, and I would look at it and go, you can't do this. We've got a fixed, we have a CIP, you can't throw in an extra 100,000. So yes, it does get accounted for properly so that it is in accordance with GAAP, and make sure that it's capitalized with that project.
But it's basically sort of pay-go type of accounting
It is.
rather than COP
Exactly.
funding. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Because I just don't want it to appear that we're double dipping, that we're showing salaries and wages in the
Right.
operations and salaries and wages in the capital budget.
I just wanted to clarify what the standard practice was for that type of work.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'm hoping we can get that better clarified when Al gets on board. And
Good.
that way you can see it and how it looks.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I guess we're ready for a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Monique?
Ready? Okay. Uh, Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Going on to 7C,
Okay, so
reorganization.
thank you. So starting on page 77, I took some comments from last month. There were just a couple of minor ones made, and then I took the responses, the back and forth with the employee association, and did some reflection on some of their comments, and went back and revised the report just so that it was hopefully cleaner. I know it's still a lot of information, but I want to start with the fact that the time given for the employee association was so that they had enough time to meet, provide responses. That response happened. Management came back. The employee association didn't come back with impacts other than, and I made a commitment to share this tonight, an impact that they feel the added positions will create the potential for financial impacts in 2023 when their letter agreement expires September 30th. And it can't be about bargaining. This issue has to be about meet and confer. So they have to look at what impacts there are now or what immediate impacts they see as a result of the proposal. So there were about 15 questions with their first response. So management responded to all of that. And then there was another response back from the Employee Association that they repeated that they still feel like there's going to be financial impacts for their association and their bargaining unit in 2023 when they bargain with the district. And again, I reminded them this is not a bargaining issue, it's a meet and confer. And did they have any impact? So I made that commitment. I also, with district council's help, made the commitment that management will bargain in good faith next year, as we always have in the past. And same with the board of directors, that management confers with the board of directors and sets some parameters, with regard to a bargaining year. But that's not the issue and not what we're dealing with here. It's a reorganization. It's a management right to propose it, and it's a meet and confer issue with any labor that falls under the labor law, which the employee association does because it's a recognized unit. So I started out with the fiscal impact and made some notes, and mostly for history too, because I want to be able to explain this when the new general manager comes on board. But I want to scroll, Rena, if you will, down to the org chart first, the existing one, which is on page 83. So this is the way the organization looks today. It's 20 and a half FTEs, full-time equivalents. Right now, as of December 16th, when I presented this, there was the one vacant position, which was the lead operator. And this is, I didn't have vacancy on here because of Candy Pina's retirement under ASM, but we would have had a vacancy under that as well. Proposing, if I can just if you can go to the next slide, on page 84, this is the proposal. So the proposal is to bring in, first to the far left, an operation. First, let me make a comment. In one of the meetings, the individual meetings of board members, I was asked, do the FTEs include the district treasurer, district council, or district engineer? And the answer is no. The FTEs are actual full-time equivalent employees, where those are all contracts or appointments, the district treasurer, district council, and district engineer. But if we go to the far left, the operations project coordinator, that is one of the new proposed positions. And as described, I'm just going to summarize. This is a position that we've given thought to. Ren and I have talked about it. What would be helpful in our operations in these capital projects with regard to construction, inspection, and management services? And how could we lend it to where it could be responsible for the construction specs and standards and all of the other planning documents and coordinating those activities? And as one of the board members mentioned in the meetings, provide training opportunities, because they would bring a level of skill sets that we don't currently have. We do have it with the supervisors, but they're stretched ever so thin. And because throughout these past several years with development, we really haven't staffed up, even though you've seen the revenues coming in. You obviously know the level of development that's occurred, especially in the city of Belmont, because of Rena's reports. And we really see this position being one that's going to be beneficial to us. So the first target that we're going to hit with them is the Hastings and the Vine and the Belmont Canyon project, where we will literally have our own staff member provide the construction inspection and management services. And if we can get the candidate that we have as a known in that position, then we see that being some really good cost savings. Now, question I would ask is, well, what happens when we're not doing capital projects? What happens when development might slow down? There's still an advantage to having this position, because then there's that coordination that doesn't pull Michael and Brent away from operations and maintenance. And quite frankly, with the new hires and the few more retirements coming in operations, they should really be focused on training and really trying to work toward improving the skill sets of the new hires or the ones that might come on board that are not certified water distribution operators. So that's operations project coordinator. That's the number one new position. The number two new position is right next to it, and they both report to the operations manager. They're almost like paraprofessional type positions, both requiring college educations and a lot of technical skills with regard to engineering backgrounds for the project coordinator, and then some GIS and some water supply and water resource management level type or leadership type level responsibilities for the water resources coordinator. You'll note that I have under their succession plan, and that's because this is the planned position to take over when that management analyst under the ops manager retires next year. And so we beefed that up in response to the requirements that this district is facing and every other water supplier in California under the California Conservation Way of Life. There's so many other regulatory reporting requirements that are hitting us now and in the future. And then there's this extra element of this mapping system with regard to how the state is planning to budget water and provide this district with a budget. And then how are we going to manage that or disperse that, or what are the plans going to be? And we see if we can find a candidate that can match these requirements. That's going to just advance us and get us closer as we move forward with the requirements that are going to hit us. Okay, so we took that list and that little pull-out page from the brochure, and we just worked with other position descriptions and came up with this one that we think will best suit us and as we move forward. So the plan is to bring the person on board, hopefully, if we find really good candidates, and bring them on board so there's overlap in that position too, and some training, because they'll still have those duties that the incumbent employee now is performing, but at the same time they will be new. Both these positions descriptions or classifications were drafted by us and reviewed by Coffin Associates, as were the proposed salary ranges, to make sure we hit the ballpark with them. And we did. Okay, so we had them professionally reviewed, just so we made sure that we weren't out of whack, and that there was internal alignment within the organization, and COF responded back that they were. Moving over to the right, you'll see the chief financial officer, the temporary part-time, and the accountant. Now, the accountant is an already established position within the district. It just hasn't ever been budgeted or put into the org chart. We did revise it and tweak it a little bit with Coffin Associates' help, because we wanted to make sure that element of benefits implementation, which is a payroll function, falls on this position. So that really is just a tweaking, and because that's a skill set we don't currently have on staff, with the knowledge of accounting and so much of the payroll. It's so expansive, and it's just a lot of responsibility. And even with accounts payable, and because they'll do more than payroll, but we really do have some cleanup issues with regard to our payroll and all the benefits, and organizing and getting a well-organized standard operating procedure for that. We see that as a really important role for the district. And the CFO is there for the upper level management of the finances, the budget preparation and development, the oversight of the financial and accounting services, making sure that the bank recs are done, the controller's reports are done. They're going to oversee the audit, the financial audit, and then just be helping out or stepping in where I've been stepping in on the debt financing and doing more of that rather than it's typically or in the past has fallen upon me. And then just making sure that we are utilizing our financial management system more than we have been. So that's a real important component that the CFO will be responsible for. At this time, I believe, and you'll see in the next agenda item, that we have a retired annuitant that I've worked with and have history with. He's a certified public accountant, but he's just been a finance manager for so many years, more than 30 years experience. I believe that he is the best match for now. Again, fulfilling this obligation that I've made to the board, that bring in these temporary part-time annuitants because the next general manager can figure out what they feel they need depending on what their skill sets are, what their fields of expertise are, and they can determine what might be needed in these areas. But they'll have an accountant doing that frontline work, which is a very vital piece to this, and it should be very, very functional. Down at the bottom, in response to the employee association, first I had reported last month, and I still have it in this month's staff report. We have quite a savvy telephone system out there that I see Misty's on this call and in this meeting that she reported to me is underutilized, and that there's potential there for some programming so that when there is times for short staffing, if there were only her as the administrative supervisor and one of those specialists, we could use that system or better program that system to where it could, be transferred to whoever might be handling the billing calls, or they would use the staff directory like we have it now after hours. So I left that in there. I still think that needs to be explored, and in response to an employee expression, because she had expressed it to me. But then in response to the employee association, they felt the admin specialist position, where the incumbent is retiring in another 2 months, should stay. So I wanted to be responsive to that. And for the time being, I see that it is still an important position. It does respond to all the telephone calls. It does greet whoever might walk in here. It is pretty busy now that we are moving towards shutting off. That'll happen probably next month for the first time. And there are those busy moments since we have re-implemented those costs and those fees for service interruptions if people are not paying their accounts. So we went from 20 and a half to 23.0 full-time equivalents. Last month when I presented this, and before I met with the Employee Association, it was at 24 and a half. So I just wanted to show that I feel like management has been responsive, not only to what we heard from the Employee Association and even their concerns, which deal with bargaining and not meet and confer. I still think that we've been responsive and reduced the equivalents, the FTEs, down to 23 from 24 and a half. And then the last thing I was going to show, besides all of the position classifications that need approval because they're part of the district's compensation plan, is John Davidson and I decided to do this look ahead. And it was really for the bargaining units. I wanted them to be able to see it, and I wanted the board to be able to see it. And it's on page, it's at the very end. The salary charts are there based on, and I indicated which positions are new. So there's two salary charts, one for represented employees. They're the folks that are in the Employee Association, the bargaining unit. And then the other is on page 109 for the unrepresented employees. This is where the accountant falls because it's a confidential exempt position dealing with all the employee benefits and payroll. And this is where the new CFO falls. But if you look on page 110, Rena scrolls down, you'll see this. We just called it a look ahead for 23-24, that fiscal year, just to show that how the water resources coordinator moves over there under the operations manager and eliminates that management analyst position, or it doesn't eliminate it, it fills it, right? Because those duties are going to be absorbed into this job along with many other. And you'll see that in 23-24, we'll be back down to 22. We'll still be higher than the 20.5, but we've got a succession planning water system operator down there. And then still we'll be wanting to review this telephone system versus the full-time administrative specialist position and seeing which one would benefit the district the most. So unless there's questions on all of these position classifications, I'm happy to answer those, but I'm going to stop there since I've done most of the talking, and see if there are any questions or comments. And thank you, Brenna.
Louis, you have your light on.
Oh, I never have my light on. I'm in the dark. Tammy, thank you. Tammy, page 83 and page 84, the org charts. In either one of them, are you counting the general manager's position?
I do. Yes, I do. Yep, in both of them.
Are you sure?
Yep. You want me to start on page 83? So let's start at the top, General Manager 1. I'll leave that, I'd say 1.5 is, now this is where we are now. So 1.5 with the General Manager and the part-time analyst, which is not filled right now because Monique got promoted.
Yeah,
One
but
and a
we
half.
added.
Okay, 1.5. 2.5 with Ops Manager, 3.5 Management Analyst, 4.5 with ASM. All right, 2 supervisors, 6.5, administrative supervisor, 7.5, 2 lead operators, 9.5. All right, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 and a half.
Okay.
I had to do this with another board member too.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let's do 84 then.
All right, so you ready?
Page
Starting.
84.
All right, start at the top with General Manager 1.
1.
The operations manager 2, the CFO and the ASM, they're part-time 3 because they're 0.5s. Okay,
all right.
they're 3.
Okay.
And
all
then
right.
4, 5.
You
Okay,
can
so
stop.
that's
Okay,
that's
good.
for the other board member that asked me about it, had it on this
All
page.
right.
So
Okay.
yeah, part-times are 0.5s instead of 1.0.
Yep. All right, good. So the GM is included in those numbers.
It
All
is.
right. Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, just a clarifying comment on page 79 towards the bottom, the discussion of a strong executive administrative officer. So I didn't understand that until Tammy and I talked it through, that idea is, if you go to the org chart, of consolidating the positions of the administrative services manager and administrative supervisor into a one single position that I guess could be called the executive administrative officer. So hopefully I understood that correctly, Tammy.
Let me explain that. But yes, I appreciate we had this conversation. I like it. What I meant to say, leaving as the legacy for the next GM, is that there's a possibility right now working this part-time temporary administrative services manager, and knowing that on that previous page 83, you used to have a management analyst that reported to the GM. If there was an executive officer, an administrative officer reporting to that GM that had the skill sets that an ASM had, it's possible you don't need an ASM. I just don't know what the future holds. Hello?
Yeah.
Did somebody say what? Anyway, so that's where I'm just kind of, I'm going to leave that with the next GM, that because Monique is working to automate and to make sure that we've got processes in place, that it's possible that it may never be a full-time job. So there's just future thought process. And I wanted to say that we visited on the issue. It would take more than a management analyst level position to do human resources, district board secretary, the public information, because those have some really high level experience tracks. So I just threw that out there, that it wouldn't combine the administrative supervisor and the admin services manager. It might eliminate the need for an administrative services manager, because right now that's the part-time position, and we're gonna see that if it works, it may not never need to be a full-time position again. We just don't know. And I don't know, depending on what the next general manager has in mind for those services. Sorry, Brian, that's what I meant. It wouldn't combine the two positions. It would just be a change. Maybe you eliminate that part-time and you just beef up what used to be the management analyst reporting to the general manager.
Yeah, and this executive administrative officer is not shown on any of the work charts.
No,
So
it's just it's just a thought. Yeah, it's just a concept, a thought process.
Okay.
We're trying some things out because, I'm not afraid to ask for minimization of management. I think that's a commitment to what the employees say, that if we just don't firmly need that, it depends on what comes in as the next general manager and what their skill sets are. where the strengths lie and where they might see weaknesses are that they might need. I want to be fair to them too. Thank you for that, Brian. Thank you for, I didn't jot that down, so I'm glad you brought that back up.
I'm not seeing any other comments or questions.
So this is just the postponed resolution 2022-03 from last month, and it'll approve this reorg effective March 1st, and the position classifications that are included, and then the revised salary schedules for both the represented and unrepresented employees. This item 7C.
So Kirk,
Yes.
yeah. So Tammy, quick one. The concerns that the association had, even though, we said it's just a meet and confer, not a bargaining, but the concerns were, in your estimation, were addressed, and
Yes, I do feel that way.
Okay, and most, if not all, are on board.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
No, they still hold the position of the fact that this impacts their bargaining rights in 2023, and we hold the position this is not a bargaining issue. And even though I just made the statements that I did, those were the commitments, 2 commitments, that management is committed to good faith bargaining in 2023, as is the board of directors.
Correct.
And number 2, that I would mention to you tonight that they had this concern and that it is not a direct impact and an issue for this reorganization, but that they did express it,
Yes.
and I wanted to make sure I shared it with you as a board.
Excellent.
That's fair.
Very good. Okay, fair enough. Good.
Thank you.
I think my thoughts were that a lot of detail, and it's not clear to me that all of it's strictly necessary at this point in time, but it does provide us with the path forward, and it's subject to revision. I know that some of this is going to come up in the new general manager search functions, as well as I saw some stuff related to the financial committee that we may get into some new policies. So I think this works for now, but I guess it's time for us to decide whether we want to make a resolution or not. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, I guess I tend to defer to the general manager's expertise as to what the organization needs to look like, and ours is sort of the money and the rates and that kind of thing. I like the idea of having someone. The water resources is a big element, and we do a lot of CIP. Be candid, I'm not entirely 100% keen on making so much change right before we're hiring a new GM, but I'm also not entirely opposed to it, knowing that GM will have some overlap with Tammy and can then make changes, and that Tammy's trying to take advantage of some things. I generally would not like to structure an organization around people that we think are available. The organization ought to be, what it needs to be, and then we find the people to fill the role. So, I mean, those are my general thoughts. I think on this one, I would defer to Tammy on seeing the needs, and as long as we're not, we're talking about going up for two FTEs or down to 2 FTEs, I guess, overall. So there is additional personnel costs, but it also sounds like there's an opportunity for future consolidation if we need to. I'm hoping that this is probably a short-term mushrooming in order to allow for the transition, and that we can then bring it back in and right-size it, depending upon what the new general manager is able to bring. So I kind of see that, but I don't have it. I'm seeing an org chart. I'm not seeing the bodies and the details of it all. So I don't know that I guess what I'm saying, Tammy, is I don't know that I have enough detail to say no. So therefore, I'm going to say, I would say yes, because the devil's in the details on this. It's not the org chart, and it's the money, and it's the money, and do we need to have it? We are approaching a time of change with the general managers, so there's going to be a lot of people finding new roles and doing new things, and having more people for a period of time may not be a bad thing while we affect that change. It's not going to break. I don't think it's going to break the bank with the money that we're talking about. So those are my 2 cents.
Louis?
Yeah, just a quick comment to hopefully put maybe a little bit of an ease to this is that, I looked at it the same way. Why would we do this when we have a new general manager? But then I thought, chances are that, first of all, we do have about a year with this new org chart and the new system, and chances are the general manager will not change anything as a new general manager. It's going to take a while for that general manager, and at that point we will be probably 2 or maybe 3 years into this if the new general manager wants to kind of readjust. So yeah, I did struggle a little bit with it for a while, and because personnel costs are something which any organization, especially public organizations, usually is the highest budget that we have, but because of the time and the new GM coming in, probably not changing much in the first year or two, I kind of felt comfortable with it after a while. So yep, that's it from me.
Any other comments? Brian?
No other comments. I'm ready to make a motion if we're ready.
Kathy, you turned your mic on. Do you have something to say before we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly. I spoke with Tammy about this kind of at length in terms of understanding the jump in FTE and jump back down. And from a business perspective, I thought it made sense given that what we're looking at is a lot of people retiring, and to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a situation where we have lack of personnel. I agree with Director Zuka. We don't want to just create positions because we think we have someone, but I know we definitely have the needs with the existing FTE that we have, and creating this little bump for a year and a half so that we can get the people who have worked for us for a really long time retired, and not that they would, but feeling bad that they're leaving us in, kind of in a bind, but that there's I thought it was really forward thinking. So I did appreciate that with Tammy. I know it's kind of a little sticky that we do have a new GM coming, but I also hope that the new GM will appreciate that there's some forward thinking so that we're not left with a scramble on how we're going to fill these positions with kind of the first person that applies. Not that we would do that, but so I did appreciate the forward thinking on Tammy's part.
Okay. Brian, you have a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve resolution 2022-03 as described in the staff report.
I'll second.
Okay, Monique?
Okay. Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Zucca,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Vice President Vella,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And the next item is related. So this is item 7D. It starts on 111. This is a temporary part-time annuitant. We are really in need, besides the accountant, of getting a chief financial officer in here. And Alan Labossiere, CPA, as I've mentioned before, is available to work with the district, and he's available to start on March 7th. So in accordance with the way that the board appointed, because it's very specific with CalPERS, since he is also a retired annuitant, this resolution that was drafted by Hanson Bridget is the same format as the one that was done for Monique. This is again, they are temporary. They both know that if the new GM comes in, there's issues, or they decide they want a full-time whatever position, they both know that they are part-time and they're temporary. So they may get invited to leave if that be the case. But the resolution is the same format. And then Al's offer letter begins on page 114. He's coming in at the rate of $62 an hour and 115. And he is actually going to be attending tomorrow's Finance Committee meeting just to be involved in the issues that we have, because Rick Wood, who has been serving us through CSDA as an interim CFO, is going to be handing it off to Al. And so we're going to be reporting out tomorrow to the Finance Committee the recommendations that Rick and I have come up with regard to what he's discovered in these 90 days of the transition. And then Al will pick up and work on getting those issues, some of those issues resolved, or scheduling how they can get accomplished. So the recommendation is for Resolution 2205 to approve this temporary annuitant and Al Labossiere to come on staff and be a part-time chief financial officer for the district and get us ready for budgeting, water rates. We have a lot of things coming up and a very stretched staff right now to get these things accomplished. And Rick was not intended to ever do that. He was just more of a consultant that came in and worked part-time and got in and tried to help figure out and get all the financials at least up to date, which we've done through this month. So that's staff's recommendation.
Any questions about this resolution?
I don't have any questions, and I think it's a good move, and it's needed. So if there's no questions, I'm prepared to offer the motion.
I don't see any other questions. Do we have a second?
A second.
So the motion is to consider resolution 2022-05 authorizing the temporary part-time employment of a retired annuitant, Mr. Labossiere.
Yes. Alan is his name, but he just spells it. He's Canadian.
French Canadian, probably.
Yeah, he is actually. Yes. Yes.
Okay. As long as he's good, we're okay.
Yes, I can't wait for you guys to meet him. Go ahead,
Guess we'll
Monique.
meet him tomorrow, right?
You'll see him tomorrow.
We'll meet tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Vice President Vella,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Zucca,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Thank you.
So item number 7E, discuss return to in-person board meetings. asked us to put that on the agenda primarily because it's not clear what the county is going to do and what our COVID plan says as to when we can do in-person board meetings. I wanted to get the flavor of what people think is a reasonable way to go. Just because if we go to in-person, if we use the boardroom as it is now, then we would be sitting closer than 6 feet apart at the board level and so the staff level and the attendees. So which way would people feel comfortable doing that is really the question. And Tammy, I guess if all of us are vaccinated, then we would not be required by our COVID policy to be wearing masks at the board level or at
So right
sitting
now
that far
that,
apart.
yes, we lifted the face mask requirement indoors for employees who are fully vaccinated. So the same would apply for you coming to the board meeting. And the plan would ever be that we would literally spread you all out on the dais, the 5 of you. You know how Kathy's the only one that doesn't know what our dais looks like. Right now, there were 5 board members. There were 3 staff members in the district council and 2 staff, 1 staff member and the district treasurer. We would put all 5 of you, so there would be really good space. And then we're going to go down on tables on the floor. Okay, so that we could safely do the 6 foot or at least try to get there with the distancing. The problem becomes logistically if we try to do this hybrid approach that we haven't figured out. Like if we're still going to do a virtual meeting with this, that's going to take some time to figure out. And I don't know what kind of equipment we're going to need or how we're going to do that. And still try to maintain everybody's safety. I think it's workable. It's just going to take us a little time to figure that out and how we can get that accomplished.
And
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
Sorry,
sure.
Julie. I was wondering who that was.
I also just want to give a legal update on this. Right now, the state emergency will expire under AB 361 at the end of March 30th. There are some bills that are being proposed that we're studying now that would make changes to the teleconferencing rules of the Brown Act. One of them, which I think is a real great one, would basically just say anyone could teleconference if they wanted to, any board member could teleconference, and they would not have to invite members of the public into their homes. And the rationalization is as long as there's an online functionality, then the members of the public would be seeing the board member, wherever they are on their video stream. It's not like there'll be some funny business going on that the public wouldn't see. So we're monitoring all of the bills. I don't know yet if anything will happen before March 30th. So after March 30th, you actually may not have an option to continue the way we have been going. You can still teleconference in, but you have to do that whole thing where, the agenda lists your location and you have to allow members of the public into that location. So if it's home, the home has to be accessible to members of the public. So that's all just to say, monitoring it, and I'll keep everybody apprised.
So I'm hearing that maybe we do one more month of virtual and maybe staff tries to see if we can figure something out in the boardroom for a hybrid approach, because I know the board's discussed that before, and let's see what we can work out in there. I know the last project was the operations team's been doing. We've been fully utilizing the boardroom. And so the last project I think got finished today or it's getting finished tomorrow was this whole fleshing, unidirectional fleshing program. So they've had a bunch of maps spread out in there and I'm pretty sure Brent told me that's finishing tomorrow. So we can work on that at the earliest would be April, but I would like to just find out what we would be able to do and maybe come back and report that out next month to the board, if that's okay, and see what it would take and how much work it would be, and a schedule if we can get it accomplished by April. If Julie comes back and says you're going to have to go back to in-person board meetings and maybe or have this hybrid approach in April, if that meets with the approval of the board.
I guess that makes sense. And Matt, you had a comment?
No, I was just going to say, I think that when we were in person, some of the debates that we had was trying to increase accessibility to our board meeting by video recording and broadcasting and doing all that kind of stuff at great expense, and it really didn't seem worth it. I think that the benefit of having gone remote is that the public has had the opportunity now for a couple of years to participate in our board meetings, whereas that would have been, so it kind of accomplished tangentially something that we had been talking about as a board anyway, of trying to, figure out a way to make sure that everybody had access to our board meetings and kind of maybe more parallel what Belmont and other cities were doing with broadcast channels and cable and all that kind of stuff, but it was going to be tens of thousands of dollars of infrastructure and everything else to get it set up. So I'm personally, I go into work into the office, so it's not, I kind of want to figure out a way that we can continue this, both for the flexibility of board members, for Lewis's annual trip to Malta, so you can join us at 3 a.m. local time, or whatever it might be.
I missed 3 of them.
And thank you for covering for me when I was in Spain, because I couldn't do it.
Anytime.
So I think my goal would be to, when we do go back, to figure out a way that we can do something similar, law allowing. And if we all have to be in person, is there a way we can do something like this that would allow us to increase participation? Because I think everybody's used to this technology now too. So it's not going to require, hopefully, the $50,000 of cable broadcasting and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, we could probably stream this straight to YouTube if we wanted to, or people could join the meeting. So anyway, that's kind of where I think I would like to suggest we go, whether it's in person next month or in April, or it's 3, whether we want to have 3 in and 2 can always be remote, 3 in person, something along those lines. That's another issue, another thought. When we go to district elections, we do have to think about things about like power outages and other kinds of things. That ironically, when I've had city council meetings where we were just borderline enough power going out where they were going to cancel the meeting because it was fully remote. They weren't sure that the public could actually get to the meeting. So I mean, I think that's still going to be an ongoing issue, but I do think the accessibility is, not that anybody's been here. I think the one person we were here, we were so excited we scared them away. But I do think we ought to continue this effort.
Any other comments? Lewis?
Yeah, Kirk, yes, thank you. Yeah, that is correct. We were debating whether to televise these meetings to make them more accessible to our public and to the ratepayers, and the cost was too much. But as far as televising or projecting these meetings, if we can do it in a church with an iPad on a tripod, 16-year-old was doing it the other day. I'm sure we could do it. Shouldn't be that. However, periodically we do have people that come in, and maybe they have a complaint, maybe they have a comment, maybe they have a compliment, whatever it is. We do have people that do come in. So do we allow them in if they can prove vaccination and all that, or do they come in and we hope that they are vaccinated?
We
And
require visitors to be face masks. They have to wear face coverings because we just don't want to get into
regardless,
we just don't want to get into all that, is that a real Vax card? Is that your
yeah,
Vax card? Where's your driver's license? We just require everyone who visits the district, unless they're a known quantity like pack pours, our consultant vendors, we have them on a list already
correct. So
because they've proven it.
if the
They
public
have to
come
wear a
in,
face mask.
vaxxed or not, they wear the mask,
Yep,
but
yep.
they could be unvaxxed, right?
They have to wear a face mask, and we have to do our
Okay,
best. And we're going to set up chairs that maintain safe distancing, okay? Because
yeah,
they're unknown, right?
yeah,
And then it may be that we only allow one or two in the boardroom, and there's going to be a queuing area out in the lobby. I mean, I don't want to be weird about it, but at the same time, we have to protect ourselves. We've already been through our wave of the coronavirus here on staff,
yeah,
right? And we don't know what the next wave is, but we want
correct.
to be really safe. And
So
if the rest of us are sitting in there without face masks, we're
correct.
exposed potentially.
Okay, so to me, it looks like we are recreating a lot of difficult thing to see if we could maybe go back to do it. It's too early.
It's too
To
early.
me, it's too early. And the idea of having the five of us sitting at a distance on a dais and staff, it's just like we are going out of our way to make something that is not working to try to make it work. And I go like, seriously, if we are too early, we're too early.
As
And
Julie
things
said,
things may
April,
change.
yeah, April may be that we have no choice and we have to go back to in-person meeting as
That's
she
fine.
states.
That's fine.
Yeah, yeah,
If we were mandated to
yeah.
go the way we are, and if we are mandated to go the way we were, so be it. But that's mandated. Now at this point, we're not, and it looks like we are trying to split hairs how to do this to make it right, and it's just like too much effort. And I don't think there's a need for that at this moment.
Okay, I think Brian, you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. Yeah, it seems pretty obvious we're going to be doing this same thing next month, and maybe we'll know a bit more. For purposes of this discussion, probably helpful to assume that subsequently we can do whatever we want, and then we'll find out next month if we can do whatever we want or not. I tend to think that this system works fairly well, and we could decide it's working fairly well for now and then change it in a couple months. And I'm fairly open, I guess. Don't have a super strong opinion. If we can do whatever we want, I'd be probably inclined to kind of keep it like it is. But even so, maybe 6 months down the line, and then once or twice a year after that, do an in person. Be kind of fun to do that, especially when the kids do their art again, to do that in person. So those are my thoughts.
Kathy, your light
Yep.
on.
Yeah. So my 2 cents on this is that we don't know what we don't know. So, as Julie indicated, there is going to come a point in time when we might have to go back in person. And so I think if staff has that in the back of their mind and, trying to figure out what that looks like, but for the time being, assuming I could figure out how to open my calendar invite on my iPad so that doesn't take me 10 minutes to join the meeting. I think that we stay with the status quo. I don't think there's any need to rush us to go back to in person. As much as I would love to be with everybody in person, I'm tired of being home, but I don't think it's prudent really to kind of rush to judgment. I think let's wait to see what the state mandates, because there's all sorts of the Brown Act rules will all kick in, and I think we should cross that bridge when we get there, with staff knowing in the back of their mind that we have to be prepared to go back eventually.
Okay. Yeah, one of the reasons why I was thinking of this was just the fact that we're going to get thrown back into real Brown Act capability in the future, and we ought to think about it beforehand, what our concerns are, what we should do. I do agree with Matt in terms of it would be very nice if we had a mechanism to, on a reasonable budget, have our in-person meeting visible on the web in some shape or form. And if people wanted to call in with comments, we could hear them, type of thing, and it could be recorded. But we really don't want to go to the level the city of Belmont does with a operator and robot cams and switching back and forth type of thing. But if we could have 3 or 4 fixed cameras, and that was what people would see all the time on 4 little pieces of the screen, and they could hear everybody, that would be a big step up from where we were before in terms of public participation. So those are my thoughts. We don't really need to do anything tonight, but we may want to revisit it if there's a change in state law. So we'll sort of leave it open as to whether we agendize it again. So
And
unless
it'll be a good discussion for next month, so Julie can provide an update, right? So if it's still on the agenda, she can give us an update, and then that way it's there. And it just shows that, you're continuing to, look into the issue. And then we may have something to report by then. I do know some of my other colleagues, they just used a laptop and it's fixed. And I have heard of others who've used a couple of cameras. So it's just figuring out those logistics and figuring out how we could do that. And I don't know that it'll be complicated. It's just getting it accomplished.
Okay. Good. So I think we can move on to 7F. Am I in the right space?
Yep, that's Rena's drought
yes.
report.
That's the drought report. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over just a few of the slides because there's too many. But I wanted to show this one because the board sees this one or has seen this one. It's just showing the use on a monthly basis in a line graph. And for January, of course, we all know the very dry and very warm January. So our water purchases in January actually exceeded water purchases in January 2021 by about 1.2%. Our per capita use on the residential side, the information we send to the state, and they tell us that our per capita use was 49.2 gallons per capita day. This next slide is something that's new, you haven't seen before, and it's something that I thought might be interesting. And what it's trying to show is the cumulative use of water over the calendar year. And so the blue line is the 5-year average cumulatively of water use by the district. The orange line is our cumulative water budget based on 2 tier levels that San Francisco has provided, and we're, of course, we're talking about, but it just gives you an idea that that's that 10% drop that San Francisco is asking for. They gave everybody a water budget this year to try and stay within it. And then the bar that you see there in January was the use of water for the district. And so what I'm planning on doing for the month of February is I'm going to combine January's use with February's use, and you're going to see a taller bar there for February next month. And we'll see how close we are, either below or above the orange and the blue line. Just kind of keep track of that. We had a meeting yesterday with John Davidson, Tammy, Jeanette, myself, and John talking about our water conservation, what's going on there. And we talked about making some information available to the community, things like maybe this bar chart and maybe this line graph and a couple other visual things to give people idea of how we're doing in terms of water conservation and water use. So you'll probably be seeing some more information related to this on our website. And then here's the U.S. drought map, and just kind of showing that the drought. What's interesting to me is if you take a look at the Mississippi River here, kind of in the middle of the nation's map, a lot of west of the Mississippi in February shows, moderate to severe to, extreme drought conditions, which I'd never paid attention before. So I thought that was just interesting to see visually. And then the California drought map, again, we're still under some severe drought conditions over most of the state. Things haven't changed. We had a nice wet December and fall, but it really hasn't changed the drought yet. The California reservoir map has changed. They added quite a few more. I'm not sure if people are trying to show this and they find the information useful, but they updated it. They removed that Lake Paris reservoir that was down here in Southern California, but they added a few others here in the other parts of California. Last week at the water managers meeting, the San Francisco PUC rep who was discussing water use in the region here had this map up there, and she was mentioning that the state of California likes to use and the Shasta reservoir, which is up here in the far left, and the Oroville reservoir right here, kind of like the bellwether for the state. If those reservoirs are doing well, then the water situation looks pretty good from a state perspective. But when they're not, and just like they are right now, they're not doing that well, it's not a good sign for the water year. And I think a lot of us are starting to recognize that when April 1st comes around and the state and the federal government take a look at water conditions in California, I suspect that there's not going to be it's not going to be a good sign, and I think the federal government's already mentioned that a lot of the Central Valley Project water customers they're not planning on having much of any water available for farm and municipal use is going to be down quite a bit. This map is the Hetch Hetchy precipitation, and it just kind of reflects the dry month of January. We had that nice rain in December, but now the amount of rain that we have total so far is kind of tracking along with the median, the 30-year median in terms of precipitation up in the Hetch Hetchy region. Snowpack the same way. It was doing really nice at the end of 2021, but with that dry and warm January, now we're kind of at that 30-year black median line there. Better than what it was last year, but hopefully we'll get some more snow. I heard there was some maybe in places near Tahoe that they had as much as 2 foot of snowfall with the recent storm here the past couple of days. The Tuolumne River water availability to the city of San Francisco, or the regional water system, I heard this last week and I thought I'd share because I'm not sure if everybody knows this. Some of you may know. But of course, we know that the Tuolumne River is a major course of water that brings water this way, but it also has other users or people or agencies that take water from it. And the SFPUC rep mentioned that the water that we get here is water that's left over after the Modesto Irrigation District and the Turlock Irrigation District get their share of water out of the Tuolumne River. So the 127,000 acre feet that you see right here is the water that has not been used by those two irrigation districts and is available. But you can see that if we want to fill up the entire regional water system, we need to have close to 600,000 acre feet. And so far, we've had 127,000 acre feet thanks to the storms in October and December. And of course, they're a lot better than what happened in 2021 when only 57,000 acre feet was made available to the regional water system. So that was interesting to learn that we get water, but it's after those two irrigation districts get their share of water. A peek of the system's storage facilities. On the far right-hand side, February 1st, percent of maximum storage. The Tuolumne system had 73% of capacity in terms of water stored, and in locally 80%. And that, of course, wouldn't be too unusual right now because they're trying to make sure they have room for the snow melt that, whatever snow melt they have is anticipated to melt and fill those reservoirs. We'll see how they go. But we're not doing too bad in terms of storage. The regional water system deliveries during the month of January, you can see the green line there. It started out above 130 million gallons a day. And with the dry, warm weather, it actually shot up quite a bit and caught up with the water use that was similar in 2019. It's still less than 2020, but actually the warm weather brought out people's water use during the month. So that's maybe not as good a sign, just kind of thinking about the drought and what may be lurking out there. This is also something I shared with the board last week, this water conservation tracker, water reduction tracker, this again provided by the SFPUC staff. And what's interesting to point out here is this 14.9% figure, the water reduction in San Francisco customers. The SFPUC staffer who made the presentation said that the reason that's so high is because there's still a lot of downtown, the financial district buildings that don't have a lot of people occupying them. So there's still a lot of water use that is just not taking place compared to pre-pandemic, which I thought was interesting. So I think if you were to factor that in there, their water reduction really by their customers, I suspect would be less than 10%. It might be better than us, but I don't think it'd be much more better than the wholesale customers. And then the drought campaign, the SFPUC is underway with the drought campaign, so you can see ads, Google ads. They're even talking about using the back wall of our building here. As you know, we use that to put up banners, and we've had some conversation with them and trying to work out something so that they can put a banner up there. But you're going to see ads on the internet, on the highway, for people just to make them aware that, we are in the midst of a drought and there are things that you can do to reduce water. And so if you go to some of the social media places there, you can actually see what some of these ads look like. And then the last thing was in the past couple of weeks, there have been a number of articles that were talking about the southwest part of the United States being in an extreme drought condition, one of the worst in 1,200 years. So I found one of the articles and just cut and pasted. It was from the Washington Post, and I liked it because it talked about that, and it talked about how much snow and stuff we had, the record-setting snow we had in the Sierra Nevadas just in December. But it just talks about Lake Powell, Lake Mead, how the drought and this mega drought has affected, water in those two large reservoirs, things that they haven't seen in a long time. It's not getting any better. So I just thought it was an interesting article to share with you all. So that's the presentation. We'll continue just to update. And then if we hear things, again, you will know as well, too, with anything regarding the drought. So are there any comments or questions that you may have of me and this information?
Brian?
Yes, I appreciate the presentation, Rena. Helpful as always. I wish you had more good news to give us.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, February, at least locally, is pretty dry.
it is.
That'll show up next month. Maybe they got some snow up in the Sierras where we can benefit, not just Tahoe. One thing I did want to ask is we had discussed briefly a month or two back about approaching the city of Belmont to see if they would be interested in some type of lawn replacement. And I don't view that as an urgent thing, but I was wondering if we could have it come back to the board at some point, see if there was any interest over on their side.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, that, one of their largest lawn areas was a sports complex across the highway from us, kind of northeast of us. And a few years ago, they actually got a grant to go in there and replace that with artificial turf. I mean, because we're looking for places where there might be opportunities for reclaimed water, the purple pipe type water, and something like that would be an obvious choice. But anyway, so the city of Belmont has, at least in one of their large land areas with lawn, taken it out and replaced it with artificial turf. But we can find out again if there's any other areas that they're interested in, if there's places where they may want to take advantage of our grant or something like that to replace turf, because turf is a big water user. Yeah,
Right.
big water user.
Okay, thanks.
Something else we could think about is like the school district, right? They like Ralston Middle School has, I don't know what it looks like now, but some form of grass or weeds.
Yeah, I think those are good assignments for Jeanette, Rena. You can pass
Yeah,
those off and
yeah.
see
I
if she
mean,
can
I
visit
would
them.
imagine those things, the size of their lawns could drastically affect the budget for that. So, I mean, we'll get some information and bring it back and share with the board and talk about it. What might be some good ways to try and reduce water use by maybe replacing some lawn for some of the schools or parks. or land
Yeah,
areas.
exactly. Yeah, to that point, because I've coached a lot of soccer at Ralston, and the fields do not look good at all right now. But Crystal Springs have a lot of very, very nice fields, and they're all artificial turf. And we go there every Saturday, so they were able to do it. So hopefully, Ralston may be able to do part of those fields, but I don't even know if they're watering them right now because they don't look good at all. So, but they do have a large area that if they were to water, that could be a big water user. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? We can move on to the manager's report. Tammy, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I keep forgetting to push my button on my little remote. I apologize. So with regard to the general manager recruitment, now that it's active and it's posted out to the district website and CPS HR Consulting is blasting that out, I will be sending out calendar reservations more than likely tomorrow afternoon about reserving the special board meeting dates where there'll be closed sessions for the full board for some reviews of the candidates. And so I'm just going to give you those dates tonight for you to jot down and be prepared when I send them out. April 14th is the first one, and this is the candidate review meeting with the board, and this is the quarterfinal review based on their schedule. And then May 12th, this is a closed session for final interviews. And that's it. So those two board meetings, there'll be an ad hoc committee in between there where they'll look at some semi final interviews, but just be prepared. I didn't want you to be shocked. It'll basically be, open the meeting and then go into closed session for these items. So I want to give that heads up. And then you've seen my report about the district treasurer and accounting services. We didn't want you to think we forgot about it, but I want to have a discussion tomorrow with the board's finance committee about just, what kind of services and make sure that we're getting what we expected out of the two firms. There's three proposals. I think two of them are far more responsive to the board's RFP than the third one. And so I want to have the chance to vet that with your finance committee tomorrow before bringing it back to the full board. And thank you for the feedback. Last month, I revised and updated the employee wellness program and shaved it down to 1,600 total. And so far, we haven't necessarily had just a rush in here for employees to participate. I'm trying to make it more as an incentive, but maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. We'll see. And then last but not least, there was a question last month, and it was Brian who asked about the commodity charge revenues and why they were at 50. I tried to explain it. He and I have talked since then about, maybe it still doesn't quite answer the question. So I'm asking just for a little time to hopefully get Al to dig deeper when he's on board to see if he can offer up a better explanation. But you can see in my report that I went back to last year to see where we were for the same time period and just think that it's got to be based on the fact that we were budgeting 9.8 or projecting 9.8, million dollars for revenues for commodity charges last year. We reduced that to 9.6, believing that there would be some reductions in use. And so we'll just have to get him to dig into those financials more and see if he can offer up a more thorough explanation. And Brian was kind enough to say thank you, and he'll wait for that better explanation. So I appreciate your patience with that one until we can further research it. And that's it. I think it seemed like there was one more thing I was going to mention. Oh, I know what it is. So just so that you're advised, and I think Rena and I will, the plan is to bring something back next month. The district has been participating in meetings with the SFPUC, Bosca, City of Redwood City, Foster City, Cal Water. Am I missing anybody, Rena? And then the Silicon Clean Valley Water and San Mateo wastewater
Water.
on the
Yeah.
PrEP project. Okay, it's potable reuse.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's using Crystal Springs. It's a major huge capital program that SFPC has had on their radar. We've been asked to join the table because we're in this area, and it would provide a drought supply of water for us as a district. But it is huge, and we want to bring back next month because we're going to be asked to make a financial expenditure for their phase 3. They've already gone through some phase 1 and 2. They have Kennedy Jinks as the engineer. And so far, so good. It looks like a really good resource for the district. Maybe even, when we think about, drilling a ground well, even for test purposes or drought use, this may be more favorable and more cost effective, even though it's going to be very expensive in the long run. Okay. And we won't have to deal with all those groundwater issues or treatment issues. So stay tuned. I just wanted to give you a heads up. And we're happy to be participating with that group, just so that we're not left out. We are part of the SFPUC, there's no doubt, as a Bosca member and the wholesale customer, but this would give us a specific chunk of the pie, and part of this project rather than just being part of the regional water system. So we would actually have probably double benefit, us at the table, and then, our benefit as being a wholesale customer to SFPUC. So stay tuned. I don't know that we'll have a whole lot of information next month, but we want to just at least prepare you that we will likely be bringing a request to be involved and engaged in the financial expenditures. They're looking like anywhere from $25,000 a portion up to 50, wasn't it, or 80, Rena, right? Just depends.
50. Yeah.
50 to, yeah, 25 to 50,000. So we'll be bringing that back to the board for consideration, and then just a little bit of background so that you have more information on it. And that was it. I hope I didn't steal your thunder, Rena. Wasn't sure if you were going to bring it up this month. Okay, thanks. That's all from me.
Brian, did you have a question on that?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm glad to hear about the prep stuff coming up. I was pretty involved with that at Valley Water. So I think that it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about the the commodity charge revenue percentages. And I also appreciate Tammy re-examining the wellness program. I had raised that as an issue, and we've been talking earlier today about controlling costs. So there was something on that. And it did occur to me looking at this that if we're really lucky, that $500 incentive for COVID boosters, maybe we won't have to pay that very often if we and the rest of the world are lucky and we don't need that many boosters. So
Hopefully.
Anyway.
Hopefully. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other green lights. So next item is administrative services. Monique.
Okay, I just wanted to give a couple highlights of a couple of updates. One, our office hours, we have reopened, and we're open from 8 to 2, Monday through Thursday, and then we're still closed on Fridays. The public is required to wear masks, and I believe we're still limiting it to one person in the office at a time. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And then we did receive the payment from the state for the $35,749, so that was exciting. We're going to get together and review the list of the people that we applied for and get that dispersed. We also have learned of a new program that the state is currently developing, which is the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. They're getting ready to roll it out. They haven't quite finished it completely. You can see that I included when there's a public hearing, just in case anybody wanted to attend it, whether it's us or somebody in the public. And then we'll meet and try to determine whether or not the people that are already on the arrearages grant list or other customers might benefit by our directly reaching out to them. So that's about all the highlights that I have.
Anyone have questions on that report? I don't see anybody coming up. Thank you, Monique. Operations, back to Reno.
Point out a couple things here. I was on mute. Yeah, sorry. Just the request for underground service alerts, the location of utilities. It looks like 300 plus requests per month is starting to be the norm for us. As you can see, from April 21 through January 22, I mean, they're all exceeding, well, except for July, over 300. So we're just busy out there locating our utilities constantly on a daily basis. We had a couple of repairs in the system. The first one on Alameda, that's the one I reported actually last month as well. That's the one where we used a CalWarn system to locate some 10-inch components to make the repair. And then on the 10th, we had a service leak. It's a fire service leak at 300 Harbor. It was actually pretty deep, and on that particular ring break, we actually used Daco Construction, the contractor, to kind of help us do that because we were a little shorthanded with some people being out and sick and so on. So they actually did the dig and made the repair, and then we went back and cleaned it all up. But anyways, we had 2 system repairs. And then we're currently working with developers on 70 different projects. And so you see the list of the mixed use commercial and multifamily. There's 14 projects that are in different states with us, keeping Brent busy. And then on the admin side, the 2 supervisors, Brent and Michael, are actively participating in the year-long JPIA leadership class. In fact, Michael's in the Sacramento area tonight, and we'll be heading back to the Bay Area tomorrow. So that's my operations report. If there's any information in there that caught your attention, you have a question, feel free to ask me.
I don't see anyone. So I guess we can move on to district engineer.
Excellent. Good evening. Just 2 quick project updates. The first of which is the Harbor Boulevard Water Main project. We do have the 60% design plans completed, and before we submitted those to the district for review, we were waiting on some potholing to occur on Harbor, and unfortunately it took a while for that to transgress through the city of Belmont. Happy to report though that we actually got started on potholing this week.
Did we lose Brandon?
Uh-oh, can you hear me?
I can
Does
hear him.
everybody hear
I hear
Brandon?
him. I hear him.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I hear him.
All right, good. We started potholing this week, so that project is progressing forward. We also had the pre-construction meeting for the Hastings Vine Belmont Canyon Water Main projects a couple weeks ago. It was a great meeting. The city of Belmont was in attendance as well with all our stakeholders. And we were setting a tentative start date of early April. However, that's contingent on the material shortages that the contractor is currently experiencing. And I think that was actually mentioned earlier in the meeting. And so we're going to revisit issuing the notice to proceed in early March for maybe an early start date at some point. And I did talk with the contractor, and they're still confident that April could be a pretty good time to start. And so in the meantime, we're reviewing submittals as they're coming in. So that's it on those 2. If anybody has any questions, I can feel free to answer.
I don't see anyone raising their hand. So thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay, and financial reports.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me because I guess my headset just went out. It's just not been a good night for me, I guess, tonight. It does get well used, let's put it that way. Rena, I'm on page 147. So what we did this month is catch the board up. So this is the 12/31 standing for the budgets, revenues and expenditures. You can see at 12/31, we should have been at 41.9% in our revenues. We were at a total of 60.7, so almost 61%. Our expenses were almost right on target at 42.4%. And then as we scroll down through the, oh, sorry, yes?
I got a quick question before you go too much farther. The 41% at the top, isn't that meant to be 50%?
That should be 50%. I said the same thing. I was going, wait, I know we're not over budget. That should be 50. I think that that's one of those manual plugs that Rick mentioned about some of the spreadsheets that we have right now. So it should be 50%. So our target for revenues was higher and our expenditures were still below that. I'm trying to figure out, I think for January, when we scroll down to January's on page 150, that should be about 60% or 58%, and you'll see the revenues coming in at 68% and the total operating expenditures at 46%. One of the things that we've learned about these forms and some of these spreadsheets that we have internally with regard to the finances is that some of the formulas aren't talking to one another, or that they weren't coming from balance sheet numbers, or when they did, sometimes there are manual numbers inputted. So it created a lot of work for Rick to have to put these reports together. And this is the first assignment for Al, because everything should tie to the financial management system and the balance sheet. And so when the month ends and the books are closed, all of that information should feed into a report. So this is his first assignment, is to make sure that we start all over again if we have to. And we use whatever report we can get out of the FMS. If it looks ugly, let's modify it and try to make it look more presentable and professional. For many financial management systems, the reports are not attractive or they're not useful. We do have to, dress them up some in Excel. So he is confident on the numbers because they match the balance sheet when the months ended. So I feel confident in reporting both of these out for this month. One thing I wanted to report on, though, because it raised attention to me, is on page 150. And Rena, if you can highlight on miscellaneous non-operating revenue and the actuals through 131, that big number of $762,772. That's the actualization of the sale proceeds from F Street. Okay, so when I saw that, I knew that was probably what it is because it was 720 grand, but I wanted to make sure and report that out, that's why that number is so high on that line item. And then the two capital CIP and the COP budgets. Thank you, Rena and Monique. I know you worked hard with Rick to get those updated. And if there's any other questions, I'm free to answer them as best possible. And that's all.
Let's see. Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that one line item number. I just, more for the sake so that you guys are aware, I got the financials. There's 3 tables. I got the same 3 tables twice. I don't know if everybody else got that. So there's an extra 3 pages. Unless I am really so tired that there's actually new information on them and I missed it. But I got 3 pages, 3 actual leaves of paper with 6. It's 6 double-sided, but the tables are the same.
Well, maybe you're special.
I am. I got 152 pages in my board packet.
Yeah, we'll make sure we mention that to staff. Monique, will you make a note of that? Because that's one of their things to be doing on the front desk, is going page by page through those to ensure that the copier doesn't miscopy or misprint. So.
Yeah. So I don't know what's in the PDF that you have, whether or not you repeat. Like, so if you go scroll down a little bit, there's that one, and then that one's got the highlighted yellow. Yeah, but see, there's 152. That table is repeated twice. Oh, there it is, right there.
That repeated twice. You're right.
Well, one of them is through 12/31, Matt. The actuals and the on page 159. Remember, I promised I'd catch you guys up. Yeah, I'm sorry that's confusing. So they didn't change much for the 2 months, but we're catching you up. Okay.
Okay.
And then the one on page 152.
I was looking at the bottom. I was looking at the bottom numbers, and they were all the same. So I didn't know how they could be.
Yeah. So we didn't have a whole lot of expenditures. Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for bringing that up. And so I am glad that staff did their job. Laura's pretty smart, pretty tight on these pages when she's making the copies.
I'll take my comment back. Maybe you're not special after all.
No, I'm not special after all. I mean, the expenditures were exactly the same 1 month apart.
Yeah.
How often does that happen?
I know, I
Looking at it
know.
going, wait, the table got sent twice, so.
Yeah. And that's all.
Okay. So if there's nothing else on the financials, directors' reports. Louis, you have a director's report?
Just a couple of quick meetings that I attended. I attended the first ad hoc meeting on the general manager recruitment, and that was very interesting. And I was pretty impressed with our consultant. And I also attended the agenda review meeting, and that's it for me this month.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I want to thank Louis for pinch hitting for me. My mom had a medical issue, and I had to do an emergency flight out to Spain. That's sort of end of last month, so I appreciate him stepping in, and I'll debrief with them and figure out what the next steps are. So, but I'm back.
Curious, what part of Spain?
What's that?
What part of Spain? Curious.
Valencia.
Oh, Valencia. Oh,
Valencia.
I was there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my mom has made a full recovery, so that's the good news.
Perfect.
Okay. Brian, you have anything to report?
No, other than to say I was happy to talk to Tammy about that one, the reorg item, and happy to do that for other more complicated items that come along our plate. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Kathy?
Nothing really to report. I had a call with the consultant to kind of talk about the GM search, and then I meet with Tammy before every board meeting just to go over the agenda.
Okay. Let's see, I also attended the ad hoc GM search meeting and the agenda meeting. But one thing that I did do was I was at the opening reception for the Black History Museum in Redwood City and met with the Belmont mayor, Julia Mates, and it was just a couple of minute conversation about what issues we had between our two organizations and what's happening in Belmont, and some parallels and about AB9 and some other things. But she's aware that we have a regular staff communications between us, between the two organizations on a quarterly basis, and that Tammy's been doing that for a number of years. And I mentioned that we hadn't had a higher level meeting, which we have had in the past, mayor to president of the board, with the staff involved also, but just to see if there was anything at a board level that needed to be discussed or that type of thing. And she seemed open to the idea. So I mentioned it to Tammy, and so as they have their quarterly meeting, they can decide whether or not there's anything that needs to be discussed at the political level as opposed to the staff level, and how that might work. Since I haven't been involved in it, I don't know, Louis or Matt, had you been involved in that type of thing before?
Yes, I have. I have a couple of times, as a matter of fact. And the last time I was president, we tried it, and because it depends on who's mayor. Certain people are very receptive, and others, it takes a long time for them to commit to a meeting, and before you know it, the year is over. So the meetings that I had with previous mayors and staff were, I thought, were very productive. They thought they were very productive. We do play in the same sandbox, so I think it's crucial that we have at least one meeting a year, and I think it will be very productive for both agencies. So I did. So good thing that you mention that to the current mayor as president of this board, and hopefully something will come out of it. So,
Yeah, we do have a lot of issues ongoing that need to be coordinated, but it's up to the staff whether or not it's useful for me to get involved with her.
And I responded to Kurt that I have sent my invitation to Afshin, the city manager, because we agreed we'd meet back when we met in the fall, that we'd meet again in March. So I sent him dates and times, and I put this on my little list. I always bring a list when I meet with him, and we'll talk about that.
Good. So that concludes my director's report. So we're on to communications. Anything there, Tammy?
No, you all just got this from me. You remember. So this is the customer who likes to send these notes. We have a history. So I thought it was time, since he's now addressing the board of directors. He hasn't in the past. He's directed his communications to me or just MPWD. So now you know him. And I told you that I contacted Belmont PD, and he's on a watch list. So we'll just keep an eye out, and any more of those we'll let you know about, especially if they're addressed to you all.
so nothing else after that one? No phone calls or anything?
No, it's usually about once every 5 to 6 months, 4 months. This time we got two just right in a row, and he just happened to put his when he cut up that one notice, that card we sent, his address was in there. So we were finally able to confirm who it was. We already knew all along.
They're always the same, right? The water rates
Yeah.
are high or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. His issue is about measuring in units rather than gallons. And he thinks he's conserving water, and because he might save 10 gallons, it doesn't get measured because it might roll over into another unit, or it'll stay in the same unit. That's at least what he conversed with me about maybe a year and a half ago. I actually physically talked to him on the telephone a couple times.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's all.
Okay. Then I guess we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you guys, and have a great evening, okay?
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Night.
And see some of you tomorrow, yes.
Yes, we'll see you guys, Lewis and Kirk, tomorrow at the finance meeting.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. It's what, 10 or 10:30?
10:30. 10:30.
10:30. All right. See you tomorrow.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.